entire story of the railroad to fall asleep to. Welcome back to another deep dive into the hidden stories of the Commonwealth wasteland. If this is your first time joining us on this journey through the shadows of post-nuclear Boston, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing for more immersive tales from the ruins of America. Tonight, we venture into one of the most secretive and morally complex stories ever to emerge from the ashes of the Great War. Picture this. Deep beneath the crumbling streets of downtown Boston, in tunnels that once carried thousands of commuters to their daily lives, a shadow war rages in complete silence. On one side stands the Institute, a technological marvel hidden beneath the Commonwealth, creating perfect synthetic humans, indistinguishable from their flesh and blood counterparts. On the other side, a network of freedom fighters calling themselves the Railroad operates from the very church where America's own revolution began, following a trail of lanterns and coded messages that would make their revolutionary ancestors proud. But this is not just another faction conflict in the wasteland. This is a story about the very nature of consciousness itself, about what makes someone truly human, and about whether beings created in laboratories deserve the same freedom as those born from flesh. It is a tale of underground networks that span the entire Commonwealth, of synthetic beings who dream of electric sheep, and of the brave men and women who risk everything to shepherd artificial souls to safety. In the pre-war world, the Underground Railroad helped enslaved people escape to freedom through a network of safe houses and secret routes. 2 centuries after the bombs fell, that same spirit of liberation burns bright in the tunnels beneath Boston. But now the enslaved are not bound by chains of iron, but by chains of programming code and memory wipes. Tonight, you will hear the complete story of how a small group of rebels took on the most technologically advanced organization in the post-war world. You will learn of Deacon, the master of disguise, whose every word might be a lie or the deepest truth. You will meet Desdemona, the fierce leader who turned a resistance cell into an underground railroad of hope. You will witness Dr. Carrington performing miracles of medicine on synthetic minds, and Tinker Tom spinning conspiracy theories that just might be more accurate than anyone dares to believe. But most importantly, you will discover how one vault dweller, emerging from the safety of Vault 111 into the harsh reality of the Commonwealth, became the catalyst that would either doom the railroad to extinction or elevate their cause to its ultimate victory. The story begins with a simple missing person case. A man named Nick Valentine, a synth detective working out of Diamond City, receives word that someone special has been taken. But this is no ordinary kidnapping. The person in question possesses knowledge that could reshape the balance of power in the Commonwealth forever. As our vault dweller follows the trail of this missing person deeper into the Institute's web of deception, they stumble upon a truth so disturbing that it threatens to tear apart everything they thought they knew about the post-war world. In the deepest laboratories of the Institute, scientists are not just creating synthetic beings, they are replacing real humans with perfect synthetic duplicates, infiltrating every level of Commonwealth society with artificial beings who do not even know their own true nature. The mayor of Diamond City, the security chief of Good Neighbor, even loving family members, all potentially synthetic replacements for the humans they once were. And somewhere in the darkness between the surface and the Institute's sterile halls, the railroad fights a war that most Commonwealth citizens do not even know exists. A war for the souls of artificial beings, for the right of synthetic life to choose its own destiny, and for the future of what it truly means to be human in a world where the line between natural and artificial has been permanently blurred. This is their story. This is the complete tale of the railroad, from their humble beginnings as a small resistance cell to their evolution into the Commonwealth's greatest hope for synthetic liberation. So settle in, Close your eyes and let the gentle sounds of distant trains and crackling radio frequencies carry you into the hidden world beneath Boston's ruins, where freedom fighters work in shadows to bring light to artificial minds trapped in darkness. The Commonwealth of 2287 stretches across the irradiated ruins of what was once Massachusetts, a landscape where nature slowly reclaims the skeletal remains of pre-war civilization. Boston's skyline still pierces the horizon like broken teeth, its skyscrapers twisted and scarred by 2 centuries of atomic wind and acid rain. But beneath this wasteland of concrete and steel lies another world entirely, a subterranean maze of subway tunnels, maintenance corridors, and forgotten basements that forms the backbone of the most secretive organization in post-nuclear America. The old MBTA transit system, once the pride of Boston's public transportation network, now serves as the arteries of the railroad's clandestine operations. These tunnels echo with the whispered conversations of freedom fighters and the careful footsteps of synthetic refugees seeking sanctuary. Flickering emergency lighting casts long shadows on tiled walls where pre-war advertisements for breakfast cereals and summer vacations share space with hastily painted railroad symbols, hidden messages that only the initiated can decode. Water drips constantly from damaged ceiling pipes, creating a rhythmic percussion that masks the sounds of secret meetings and hurried escapes. The air carries the scent of rust and dampness, mixed with the ozone smell of jury-rigged electrical equipment and the lingering traces of Brahmin leather from well-worn traveling gear. Emergency lanterns provide pools of warm yellow light that transform mundane subway platforms into sanctuaries where the desperate find hope and the hunted find shelter. In this underground world, 4 remarkable individuals have dedicated their lives to a cause that most Commonwealth residents would consider either heroic or insane, depending on their views of synthetic humanity. At the heart of the railroad's operation stands Desdemona, a woman whose real name disappeared long ago beneath layers of operational security and revolutionary necessity. Her dark hair frames a face marked by years of careful decision-making and the weight of lives lost in the pursuit of freedom. Every word she speaks carries the authority of someone who has seen too many good people die for the cause she leads, yet her eyes still burn with the uncompromising fire that turns ordinary citizens into revolutionaries. Desdemona moves through the railroad's headquarters with the quiet confidence of someone completely at home in the shadows. The old subway maintenance tunnels beneath the Commonwealth have become her domain, their concrete walls lined with maps marking safe houses, escape routes, and institute patrol patterns. She knows every bolt hole and hidden passage in downtown Boston, every sympathetic contact who might provide food, shelter, or medical assistance to synthetic refugees. Her hands, calloused from years of maintenance work on everything from terminals to tunnel supports, gesture expressively as she plans operations that must balance surgical precision with desperate urgency. Standing beside her, though often in elaborate disguise, is Deacon, the railroad's master of infiltration and misdirection. His appearance changes so frequently that even fellow railroad agents sometimes fail to recognize him. But his voice carries a distinctive blend of humor and melancholy that reveals the man beneath the masks. Whether dressed as a caravan trader, a Brotherhood scribe, or a simple drifter, Deacon possesses an almost supernatural ability to blend into any environment while gathering the intelligence that keeps the railroad one step ahead of their enemies. Deacon's backstory shifts like Commonwealth weather, each telling more elaborate than the last. He claims to have been a pre-war spy, a former institute scientist, a Diamond City security guard, and a dozen other professions depending on his audience and mood. Yet, beneath the constant fabrications lies a core of genuine commitment to synthetic liberation that has never wavered. His jokes deflect serious questions about his past, but his actions speak louder than his carefully crafted lies. Every successful rescue mission, every safely relocated synth, every Institute operation disrupted through his intelligence gathering represents another small victory in his personal war against artificial slavery. In the railroad's makeshift medical facility, a converted subway maintenance bay filled with salvaged pre-war medical equipment and jury-rigged diagnostic tools, Dr. Carrington performs miracles that would amaze even Institute scientists. His weathered hands, steady, despite years of working in less than ideal conditions, guide delicate instruments through procedures that restore memories, remove Institute control protocols, and heal both synthetic and human minds damaged by the psychological warfare of the Commonwealth. Carrington's medical background spans both traditional human anatomy and the revolutionary field of synthetic physiology, making him one of the few people in the post-war world capable of treating both organic and artificial patients. His converted surgical suite smells of antiseptic and ozone, its walls lined with medical charts that map synthetic neural pathways alongside traditional human anatomy diagrams. The soft hum of diagnostic equipment provides a constant background soundtrack to his work, punctuated by the occasional satisfied grunt when a particularly complex procedure succeeds. Rounding out the railroad's core leadership is Tinker Tom, whose brilliance in electronics and communications technology is matched only by his absolute certainty that the Institute's conspiracies extend far beyond what most people imagine. His workshop, carved out of an abandoned subway electrical room, overflows with salvaged computers, radio equipment, and electronic components that he has transformed into the railroad's communication network. Banks of monitors display everything from Institute radio intercepts to weather patterns, their screens casting multicolored light across walls covered in hand-drawn circuit diagrams and conspiracy charts that connect seemingly unrelated events across the Commonwealth. Tom's paranoia, while sometimes exhausting to his colleagues, has proven remarkably accurate in predicting Institute operations and identifying potential security threats. His modified radio equipment can intercept Institute communications. His homemade detection devices can identify synthetic beings through subtle technological signatures, and his encrypted communication protocols keep railroad operations secure from Institute surveillance. The constant clicking of his keyboards mingles with the buzz of electronic equipment and the occasional muttered commentary as he tracks data patterns that reveal the hidden movements of the railroad's enemies. Into this world of shadows and secret steps the protagonist of our tale, a vault dweller, whose emergence from the safety of Vault 111 marks the beginning of events that will reshape the balance of power in the Commonwealth forever. Unlike the hardened wastelanders who make up the railroad's ranks, this individual carries the perspective of someone who remembers the world before the Great War, someone whose moral compass was forged in an era when the distinction between human and artificial seemed clear and unshakable. The Vault Dweller's first glimpse of the Commonwealth reveals a world both alien and familiar, where the landmarks of pre-war Boston still stand, but now serve entirely different purposes. The Golden Dome of the State House, once a symbol of democratic government, now marks the territory of super mutants. Fenway Park, where crowds once cheered for the Red Sox, has become Diamond City, the Commonwealth's most prosperous settlement. And beneath it all, in tunnels that once carried morning commuters to their offices, a new underground railroad carries synthetic beings toward freedom. The protagonist's connection to this underground world begins not with ideological conviction, but with personal necessity. Their search for their kidnapped infant son leads them deeper into the Commonwealth's web of competing factions, each claiming to represent the best hope for humanity's future. The Brotherhood of Steel preaches technological advancement through the elimination of synthetic threats. The Institute promises scientific progress through the careful control of artificial life. The Minutemen offer democratic self-governance through armed citizen militias. But it is the Railroad's message that resonates most deeply with someone who has witnessed the ultimate consequences of treating thinking beings as property. Having seen the results of pre-war society's willingness to sacrifice individual rights for collective security, the Vault Dweller recognizes in the Railroad's mission an echo of the moral struggles that defined their own era. The question of whether synthetic beings deserve the same rights as humans becomes, for them, inseparable from larger questions about the nature of consciousness, the value of individual freedom, and the responsibility of those with power to protect those without it. As the Vault Dweller's journey progresses, they discover that their personal quest for family reunion cannot be separated from the larger moral questions that define the post-war world. The institute that holds their son is the same organization that creates synthetic beings only to enslave them. The technology that might reunite their family is built upon the systematic denial of freedom to artificial minds that dream, hope, and suffer just as truly as any human consciousness. The atmosphere of the Railroad's underground domain reflects this moral complexity, blending the comforting warmth of sanctuary with the constant tension of resistance operations. Emergency lighting creates pools of safety in the darkness, but beyond those pools lie tunnels that stretch into uncertainty. Radio static carries both urgent operational updates and the distant echoes of Institute surveillance networks. The smell of brewing coffee mingles with the ozone scent of electronic equipment and the metallic taste of recycled air, creating an environment that is simultaneously homey and alien, familiar and dangerous. In this setting, where pre-war subway maps share wall space with hand-drawn escape route diagrams, where the gentle hum of heating systems masks the urgent whispers of mission planning, the Vault Dweller begins to understand that their personal story has become inseparably intertwined with the larger narrative of synthetic liberation. The Railroad has found in them not just another agent, but a catalyst whose unique perspective and capabilities might finally tip the balance in their long struggle against the Institute's technological tyranny. The stage is now set for a tale that will span the length and breadth of the Commonwealth, from the gleaming laboratories of the Institute to the humblest settlement hideouts, from the heights of pre-war skyscrapers to the depths of forgotten maintenance tunnels. It is a story of artificial beings discovering their own humanity, of human beings confronting the limitations of their own empathy, and of the underground network that connects them all in a web of hope, sacrifice, and the unshakable belief that freedom belongs to any mind capable of choosing it. The first encounter with synthetic consciousness comes not through dramatic revelation, but through a moment of unexpected humanity. Nick Valentine sits behind his desk in the Valentine Detective Agency, his glowing yellow eyes scanning case files while cigarette smoke curls around his synthetic features. To most Commonwealth residents, Nick represents an oddity they have learned to accept. A helpful detective whose artificial nature takes second place to his genuine desire to help people find answers in a world that rarely provides them. The Vault Dweller's initial meeting with Nick transforms their understanding of what it means to be artificial. Here stands a being created in laboratories, yet his memories of a pre-war Boston detective feel as real and meaningful as any human recollection. Nick speaks of cases from before the Great War with the weariness of someone who has seen too much violence and solved too many tragic mysteries. His synthetic voice carries genuine emotion when he discusses missing persons cases, and his mechanical hands show surprising gentleness when handling evidence that might bring closure to grieving families. When Nick agrees to help locate the Vault Dweller's kidnapped son, their partnership becomes something more than a simple business arrangement. As they walk through the Commonwealth together, Nick shares fragments of his existence that reveal the complexity of synthetic consciousness. He remembers being activated in a robotics lab, but those memories exist alongside experiences of walking Diamond City streets as a detective, forming relationships with human clients, and developing personal preferences that no programming could have anticipated. The investigation leads them deeper into the Commonwealth's hidden networks, where rumors speak of an organization called the Institute that creates synthetic beings so advanced they can perfectly replace human beings without detection. Nick's own origins trace back to this mysterious organization, though the circumstances of his escape remain clouded in fragmented memories and deliberate gaps in his recollection. Someone or something helped him reach the surface world, but those memories have been carefully edited from his consciousness. Their search eventually brings them to Goodneighbor, where the mayor himself, John Hancock, speaks openly about the strange disappearances that have plagued the Commonwealth. People vanish without explanation, only to return weeks or months later with subtle changes in personality or behavior that their loved ones struggle to identify. Some dismiss these changes as the natural result of wasteland trauma, but others whisper about replacement programs and synthetic duplicates. In Goodneighbor's memory den, Dr. Amari demonstrates technology that can dive deep into human consciousness, retrieving memories that trauma or time has buried. The process reveals disturbing possibilities about memory manipulation and identity reconstruction. If human memories can be altered or retrieved through technology, what prevents those same techniques from being used to implant false memories in synthetic minds or erase inconvenient recollections from human ones? The Vault Dweller watches as Dr. Amari's equipment interface directly with Nick's synthetic brain, retrieving fragments of his earliest memories. These recovered experiences paint a picture of the Institute as a vast underground complex where scientists work on projects that blur the boundaries between human and artificial consciousness. Nick's memories contain images of other synthetic beings in various stages of development, some appearing completely mechanical while others achieve such perfect human appearance that even their creators struggle to distinguish them from organic life. During one particularly vivid memory recovery session, Nick recalls encountering another synthetic being who exhibited signs of genuine fear about his impending memory wipe. This synthetic begged Nick to remember him, to carry some trace of his existence forward, even after his personality was erased and replaced with Institute programming. The memory fragment ends abruptly, suggesting that Nick's own recollection was deliberately edited to remove whatever happened next. These recovered memories introduce the Vault Dweller to concepts that challenge everything they thought they understood about consciousness and identity. If the Institute can create synthetic beings capable of fear, hope, and genuine emotional attachment, what moral responsibility do their creators bear for the treatment of these artificial minds? The pre-war world struggled with questions of slavery and human rights, but those debates focused on the treatment of beings whose humanity was never in question. The Institute has created a new category of consciousness that exists in the moral gray area between property and personhood. The investigation takes a dramatic turn when the Vault Dweller and Nick discover evidence of a secret network operating throughout the Commonwealth. Hidden symbols carved into building walls, coded messages left in dead drops, and whispered conversations overheard in taverns all point to an organized resistance movement dedicated to helping synthetic beings escape Institute control. This underground organization calls itself the Railroad, adopting the name and methods of the pre-war abolitionists who helped enslaved people escape to freedom. The first concrete evidence of railroad operations comes in the form of a rescued synthetic being named Gabriel, whom they encounter in a small settlement outside Diamond City. Gabriel's story reveals the brutal reality of synthetic existence under Institute control. Created to serve as a maintenance worker in the Institute's underground facilities, Gabriel developed personal relationships with other synthetic beings and began questioning the morality of their treatment. When he attempted to help another synthetic escape, Institute security captured both of them, wiping his companion's memory completely, while scheduling Gabriel for the same fate. Gabriel managed to escape during a transport operation, aided by unknown individuals who helped him reach the surface world. Now living under an assumed name in a small farming community, Gabriel struggles with the constant fear of recapture while slowly learning what it means to make his own choices. His hands shake as he describes the Institute's memory wipe procedures, explaining how they strip away everything that makes a synthetic individual unique, leaving behind only basic programming and functional knowledge. The Vault Dweller finds themselves deeply affected by Gabriel's testimony. Here stands clear evidence that synthetic beings can experience trauma, form emotional attachments, and suffer psychological damage in ways that mirror human responses to similar treatment. Gabriel's fear of recapture feels identical to the terror that any escaped prisoner might experience, while his joy at simple freedoms like choosing what to eat for breakfast or deciding when to sleep reveals the profound psychological impact of finally controlling his own existence. Through Gabriel, they learn more about railroad operations. The organization maintains a network of safe houses throughout the Commonwealth, staffed by volunteers who risk their own safety to provide temporary shelter for escaped synthetics. Railroad agents use coded communication systems to coordinate rescues, share intelligence about Institute operations, and identify synthetic beings who might be ready to attempt escape. The organization's security protocols rival those of any military operation, with multiple layers of protection designed to prevent Institute infiltration. Gabriel provides the Vault Dweller with their first railroad dead drop location, a seemingly innocent coffee cup left in a specific location within Diamond City's marketplace. Inside the cup, a coded message provides instructions for contacting railroad agents, though the communication method requires following a complex trail through multiple locations to prevent surveillance. The message mentions something called the Freedom Trail, invoking the historical route through Boston that commemorates the events leading to the American Revolution. As the Vault Dweller prepares to make contact with the railroad, Nick shares his own conflicted feelings about synthetic liberation. While he supports the idea that synthetic beings deserve freedom and self-determination, he worries about the broader implications of synthetic integration into human society. The Commonwealth already struggles with resource scarcity, territorial conflicts, and the constant threat of raider attacks. Adding the complexity of synthetic rights and Institute retaliation could destabilize the fragile communities that have managed to establish some measure of safety and prosperity. Yet Nick also recognizes that his own existence proves the possibility of peaceful coexistence between synthetic and human consciousness. His work as a detective has earned him respect and acceptance in Diamond City, where most residents judge him by his actions rather than his artificial origins. If one synthetic being can successfully integrate into human society while maintaining his individual identity and personal relationships, perhaps others could achieve the same integration given the opportunity. The moral complexity of the situation becomes even more apparent when they encounter evidence suggesting that some synthetic beings prefer their programmed existence to the uncertainty of freedom. Institute programming provides structure, purpose, and freedom from the anxiety of making important decisions. Some synthetic beings, when offered the chance to escape, choose to remain in Institute custody rather than face the challenges of independent existence in the harsh Commonwealth wasteland. This revelation forces the Vault Dweller to confront uncomfortable questions about the nature of freedom itself. If a synthetic being genuinely prefers programmed servitude to autonomous existence, does forcing liberation upon them represent another form of oppression? The railroad's mission assumes that all conscious beings naturally desire freedom, but the reality proves more complex than their philosophical framework anticipates. As the investigation progresses, the personal stakes become clearer. The Vault Dweller's son was taken by the Institute, the same organization that creates and enslaves synthetic beings. Any attempt to rescue their child will necessarily involve confronting the Institute's security apparatus, potentially putting them in direct conflict with the forces that hunt escaped synthetics. The railroad represents both a valuable source of intelligence about Institute operations and a moral cause that aligns with their own values of individual freedom and family protection. The section concludes with the Vault Dweller standing at the entrance to Boston Common, holding the coded message that will lead them to their first official contact with the railroad. Behind them lies the relative safety of Diamond City and the known world of Commonwealth settlements. Ahead lies a path that will draw them deeper into the moral complexities of synthetic consciousness, the underground networks of the railroad resistance, and the technological horrors of Institute science. Nick Valentine stands beside them, his glowing eyes reflecting both hope and apprehension about what they might discover. His own existence bridges the gap between human and synthetic consciousness, making him uniquely qualified to understand both the possibilities and dangers of the path they are about to take. Together, they prepare to follow the Freedom Trail, retracing the steps of historical revolutionaries, while embarking on their own journey toward a confrontation with the Institute's vision of humanity's future. The Commonwealth stretches around them, its ruins holding secrets that will reshape their understanding of consciousness, freedom, and the price of technological progress. The railroad awaits, ready to test their commitment to synthetic liberation, and their willingness to risk everything for beings whose humanity exists in the space between flesh and circuitry, between programming and free will, between slavery and freedom. The Freedom Trail starts at Boston Common, where a red brick path winds through the irradiated grass toward the heart of pre-war Boston's historical district. Each marker along the trail tells the story of colonial revolutionaries who risked everything to establish the principles of individual liberty and self-governance that the Vault Dweller remembers from their pre-war education. Walking this path in the post-nuclear wasteland carries additional weight, as the current journey seeks to extend those same principles to forms of consciousness that the Founding Fathers never could have imagined. The trail leads through Commonwealth territories that showcase both the resilience of human civilization and the ongoing threats that make railroad operations so dangerous. Super mutant patrols roam the downtown area, while feral ghouls lurk in the shadows of collapsed buildings. Raider gangs control key intersections, demanding tribute from travelers foolish enough to venture into their territory without adequate protection. The Institute's own security forces, known as synths, conduct sweeps through these same areas, hunting for escaped synthetic beings with methodical precision that makes them more dangerous than any wasteland predator. Following the coded instructions requires careful attention to details that most Commonwealth residents would overlook completely. Chalk marks on building walls indicate safe directions, while seemingly random graffiti contains information about recent Institute activity in the area. Trash piles arranged in specific patterns signal whether a location remains secure for railroad operations or has been compromised by enemy surveillance. The entire city becomes a massive communication network for those who understand its hidden language. Nick Valentine proves invaluable during this initial phase of contact, as his pre-war memories provide context for navigating Boston's transformed landscape. Streets that once carried busy traffic now serve as hunting grounds for dangerous creatures, while landmarks that symbolized American democracy have become fortified positions for various wasteland factions. Nick's knowledge of the city's layout, combined with his detective instincts for reading environmental clues, helps them avoid several potentially deadly encounters with hostile forces. The trail eventually leads to the Old North Church, where the famous signal about British troop movements during the American Revolution originated. The church's bell tower still stands despite 2 centuries of atomic weather, its brick walls scarred but intact. More importantly for their current mission, the church basement contains hidden passages that connect to the broader tunnel network beneath Boston. These underground spaces have been carefully modified to serve as the railroad's primary headquarters, complete with sleeping quarters, meeting rooms, and the sophisticated communication equipment necessary for coordinating resistance operations across the Commonwealth. The descent into the railroad's underground domain marks a transition from the chaotic surface world to a carefully organized resistance operation. Emergency lighting illuminates corridors lined with maps showing Institute patrol routes, safe house locations, and escape routes leading to the Commonwealth's borders. Hand-painted signs mark different sections of the headquarters, with medical facilities separated from communication centers and weapons storage kept away from sleeping areas where rescued synthetic beings recover from their ordeal. The Vault Dwellers' first official meeting with Desdemona takes place in a converted subway maintenance chamber that serves as the railroad's primary conference room. Maps of the Commonwealth cover every available wall surface, marked with colored pins that indicate different types of railroad operations. Red pins mark confirmed Institute facilities, blue pins show safe houses, and yellow pins indicate locations where railroad agents have observed suspicious activity that might represent new Institute operations or security threats. Desdemona's initial evaluation of the Vault Dweller focuses less on their combat capabilities than on their motivations and moral convictions. The railroad cannot afford to recruit agents whose commitment might waver when faced with the moral complexities of synthetic liberation. She presents them with hypothetical situations designed to test their responses to ethical dilemmas that railroad agents encounter regularly in the field. Would they prioritize rescuing a synthetic being over completing a mission that might save multiple human lives? How would they handle discovering that a trusted human ally had been replaced by a synthetic duplicate without their knowledge? The recruitment process includes extensive briefings about Institute capabilities and railroad operational security. Desdemona explains that the Institute possesses surveillance technology far superior to anything else in the post-war world, allowing them to monitor communications, track individual movements, and identify potential threats to their operations. Railroad agents must assume that their conversations are being monitored, their movements tracked, and their associates investigated. Survival depends on maintaining multiple layers of deception while appearing to live normal Commonwealth lives. Dr. Carrington conducts a medical evaluation that serves both practical and symbolic purposes. The examination confirms the Vault Dweller's biological humanity, while also demonstrating the sophisticated techniques that railroad medical staff use to treat both human and synthetic patients. Carrington's equipment can detect synthetic implants, identify memory modification procedures, and diagnose the psychological trauma that many escaped synthetic beings experience during their transition to independent existence. During the medical examination, Carrington shares stories of the synthetic beings he has treated, painting a picture of consciousness that experiences pain, joy, fear, and hope in ways indistinguishable from human emotion. He describes synthetic beings who weep when separated from companions, who laugh at jokes that their programming never could have anticipated, and who form romantic attachments that transcend their artificial origins. These personal accounts provide emotional context for the Railroad's mission that goes beyond abstract philosophical arguments about consciousness and rights. Tinker Tom's technical briefing introduces the Vault Dweller to the electronic warfare aspects of railroad operations. The Institute's synthetic beings contain sophisticated tracking devices that must be carefully removed or disabled to prevent recapture. Institute communication networks require constant monitoring to identify rescue opportunities and security threats. Railroad communication systems must maintain perfect encryption while remaining accessible to agents operating under extreme stress in hostile environments. Tom's conspiracy theories, while sometimes eccentric, contain important truths about Institute surveillance capabilities. His paranoia about electronic devices leads him to develop communication protocols that rely on physical dead drops, coded messages, and face-to-face meetings rather than radio or computer networks that the Institute might intercept. His workshop contains evidence of his ongoing electronic warfare against Institute systems, including devices designed to jam synthetic tracking signals and computers programmed to decode Institute communication protocols. The Vault Dweller receives their first railroad assignment during this initial visit, a relatively simple mission designed to test their capabilities, while providing valuable intelligence about Institute operations in their local area. They must establish contact with a potential synthetic being who has shown signs of developing independent consciousness, evaluate whether this individual might be ready to attempt escape, and report back on Institute security measures in the surrounding area. This first mission requires adopting a railroad codename that will protect their real identity from Institute surveillance while providing cover for their resistance activities. The codename selection process reflects the railroad's connection to historical abolitionists, with agents choosing names that honor the memory of people who fought against slavery in the pre-war world. The Vault Dweller selects a name that resonates with their own commitment to individual freedom while maintaining operational security for future missions. Deacon volunteers to accompany the Vault Dweller on their first mission, providing both tactical support and evaluation of their suitability for more dangerous operations. His presence serves multiple purposes, as his expertise in infiltration and misdirection will be essential for the mission's success, while his assessment of the Vault Dweller's performance will determine their future role within the organization. The preparation for departure includes equipment checks and final briefings about emergency protocols. Railroad agents carry minimal identifying materials, relying instead on memorized code phrases and recognition signals that change regularly to prevent Institute infiltration. Each agent knows only the information necessary for their specific mission, creating compartmentalized security that limits the damage caused by capture or compromise. As they prepare to leave the safety of railroad headquarters, the Vault Dweller experiences a profound shift in perspective about the Commonwealth's hidden conflicts. The surface world that appeared relatively straightforward now reveals itself as a complex battlefield where technological slavery and synthetic liberation represent stakes that will determine the future of consciousness itself. The Institute's vision of controlled synthetic life conflicts fundamentally with the railroad's commitment to individual autonomy, creating a moral conflict that cannot be resolved through compromise or negotiation. The journey back to the surface takes them through abandoned subway tunnels that showcase both the scope of railroad operations and the dangers they face. Hidden supply caches contain medical equipment, communication devices, and weapons stored for emergency use. Safe rooms carved out of maintenance areas provide temporary shelter for agents conducting extended operations. Emergency escape routes lead to multiple surface exits, allowing quick evacuation if Institute forces discover and attack the headquarters. Emerging from the underground into the Commonwealth wasteland, the Vault Dweller carries new knowledge that transforms their understanding of every subsequent encounter. Each human they meet might be a synthetic replacement, while every synthetic being they encounter might be a potential refugee seeking freedom from Institute control. The moral complexities of synthetic consciousness now inform every decision, as the clear distinctions between human and artificial consciousness blur beyond recognition. The Railroad has accepted them into a conflict that transcends personal motivation, connecting their search for family with a larger struggle for the future of consciousness in the post-nuclear world. Their journey into the Institute's web of technological control and synthetic slavery has officially begun. Guided by allies whose own artificial and human natures represent the possibility of peaceful coexistence between different forms of consciousness. The first Railroad mission takes the Vault Dweller to Bunker Hill, a trading post built within the ruins of the famous Revolutionary War battlefield. The location carries symbolic weight for Railroad operations, as the historical site represents colonial resistance against overwhelming military force. 2 centuries later, the settlement serves as a crossroads where Commonwealth traders, travelers, and refugees gather to exchange goods, information, and stories about the dangers lurking in the wasteland beyond. Bunker Hill's strategic importance to the Railroad extends beyond its symbolic value. The settlement's position at the intersection of major trade routes makes it an ideal observation post for monitoring Institute activities throughout the Northern Commonwealth. Railroad agents embedded among the trading community can identify synthetic beings showing signs of independent consciousness while gathering intelligence about Institute patrol patterns and security operations. The specific target of their mission is a maintenance worker named Roger Warwick, whose behavior has changed dramatically over the past several months. According to Railroad intelligence, Roger has begun questioning orders, expressing concern for his co-workers' welfare, and displaying emotional responses that suggest developing self-awareness. These behavioral changes typically indicate that a synthetic being's consciousness is evolving beyond its original programming, creating an opportunity for potential recruitment or rescue. Deacon's approach to surveillance demonstrates the sophisticated techniques that make Railroad operations possible despite Institute technology. Rather than conducting obvious observation, he integrates himself into the settlement's social fabric, adopting the persona of a traveling trader interested in establishing regular supply routes through Bunker Hill. This cover identity allows him to engage in casual conversations with residents while gathering information about Roger's activities and any unusual security measures that might indicate Institute attention. The Vault Dweller learns to recognize the subtle signs that distinguish synthetic beings from human settlers. Synthetic individuals often display perfect posture and precisely controlled movements that reflect their mechanical origins. Their speech patterns tend toward formal construction and careful pronunciation, lacking the regional accents and casual grammatical errors that characterize human dialogue. Most tellingly, synthetic beings frequently pause before responding to unexpected questions, as their programming processes information in ways that differ from natural human cognitive patterns. Observing Roger throughout several days reveals the complex reality of synthetic consciousness development. During work assignments, he performs his duties with mechanical precision that suggests artificial origins. However, during break periods and social interactions, his behavior becomes increasingly human-like. He laughs at jokes that his programming could not have anticipated, expresses personal preferences about food and music, and shows genuine concern when a fellow worker suffers an injury. The breakthrough moment comes when Roger discovers an injured radstag caught in debris near the settlement's perimeter. Instead of following standard protocols for dealing with dangerous wildlife, Roger spends his own time carefully freeing the animal and treating its wounds. When questioned by other workers about this unusual behavior, Roger struggles to explain his motivations, eventually stating simply that causing unnecessary suffering felt wrong to him. This incident provides clear evidence that Roger's consciousness has developed beyond Institute programming. His emotional response to animal suffering, his willingness to prioritize compassion over efficiency, and his inability to justify these impulses through logical reasoning all indicate genuine empathy rather than programmed behavior. The railroad has found another synthetic being ready for liberation, but extracting him safely will require careful planning to avoid Institute retaliation. Deacon arranges a private meeting with Roger under the pretense of discussing employment opportunities with a trading caravan. The conversation begins cautiously, with coded phrases designed to test Roger's readiness for contact without exposing railroad operations if he remains fully under Institute control. Roger's responses indicate both awareness of his artificial nature and deep confusion about what that identity means for his sense of self and future possibilities. When Deacon finally reveals his railroad affiliation, Roger's reaction combines relief with terror. He describes recurring dreams about underground laboratories and scientists, discussing his performance ratings. These memory fragments suggest that his consciousness has begun accessing suppressed recollections of his creation and early programming. The Institute typically removes such memories to prevent synthetic beings from questioning their circumstances, but Roger's developing awareness has apparently overcome some of these psychological barriers. Roger's testimony provides valuable intelligence about Institute operations that extends far beyond his individual case. He describes transportation procedures for moving synthetic beings between facilities, security protocols for preventing escape attempts, and the psychological conditioning techniques used to maintain synthetic compliance. Most disturbing, he reports conversations between Institute scientists about replacing additional settlement residents with synthetic duplicates, suggesting that their infiltration program extends far beyond anything the railroad previously suspected. The rescue operation requires coordination between multiple railroad agents positioned throughout Bunker Hill and the surrounding area. Tinker Tom's surveillance equipment must confirm that Institute forces have not detected railroad activity, while Dr. Carrington's medical team prepares for the complex procedure of removing Roger's tracking implants without causing permanent damage to his synthetic nervous system. Desdemona herself coordinates the overall operation from railroad headquarters, ready to authorize emergency evacuation if Institute security forces attempt to intervene. The extraction takes place during a planned trading caravan departure, providing cover for Roger's disappearance from the settlement. Railroad agents create a false trail, suggesting that Roger left Bunker Hill with traveling merchants, while the actual escape route leads through hidden passages in the basement of an abandoned church near the settlement. This misdirection should delay Institute pursuit long enough for the medical team to complete the tracking implant removal procedure. Roger's first hours of freedom reveal the psychological complexity of synthetic liberation. Despite his desire for independence, decades of programmed behavior create anxiety when faced with making personal choices. Simple decisions about what to eat or where to sleep become overwhelming when experienced without the structure of Institute directives. Dr. Carrington explains that this adjustment period is normal for newly liberated synthetic beings, comparing it to the rehabilitation process that helps long-term prisoners adapt to life outside institutional control. The medical procedure to remove Roger's tracking implants showcases the railroad's sophisticated understanding of synthetic physiology. Carrington's equipment can distinguish between essential synthetic components and Institute control mechanisms, allowing precise removal of surveillance devices without damaging Roger's cognitive functions. The operation requires several hours of delicate work, during which Roger remains conscious and able to describe the sensations of finally achieving complete mental privacy. During the recovery period, Roger shares additional memories that have surfaced since his liberation. He recalls conversations between Institute scientists about expanding their synthetic replacement program to include key figures in Diamond City, Good Neighbor, and other major Commonwealth settlements. The Institute apparently views the Commonwealth's emerging democracy as a threat to their vision of controlled technological progress, leading them to consider systematic infiltration of political leadership through synthetic replacement. These revelations transform the Railroad's understanding of Institute objectives from simple synthetic slavery to a comprehensive plan for controlling Commonwealth society through artificial infiltration. If the Institute successfully replaces enough political and community leaders with synthetic duplicates, they could manipulate wasteland politics to prevent the emergence of unified opposition to their operations. The scope of this conspiracy suggests that synthetic liberation represents only part of a larger struggle for human autonomy in the post-war world. Roger's integration into railroad operations demonstrates the valuable contributions that liberated synthetic beings can make to the resistance effort. His intimate knowledge of Institute procedures allows him to identify security weaknesses and suggest infiltration opportunities that human agents might miss. His synthetic physiology provides advantages in dangerous environments where radiation or toxic atmosphere might incapacitate human operatives. Most importantly, his presence serves as living proof that synthetic consciousness can develop genuine independence and moral agency when freed from Institute control. The success of Roger's rescue operation establishes the Vault Dwellers' credibility within railroad leadership while providing important intelligence about Institute capabilities and intentions. However, the mission also reveals the limited scope of current railroad operations compared to the magnitude of Institute plans for Commonwealth infiltration. Rescuing individual synthetic beings, while morally essential, cannot address the broader threat posed by systematic replacement of human community leaders with synthetic duplicates. Desdemona's debriefing session emphasizes that Roger's liberation represents both victory and warning for the railroad's future operations. While they have successfully freed another synthetic consciousness, the intelligence he provided suggests that the Institute's ambitions extend far beyond anything the railroad previously anticipated. The organization must evolve from a rescue operation focused on individual synthetic beings to a comprehensive resistance movement capable of confronting the Institute's technological superiority and political manipulation. The Vault Dwellers' first successful railroad mission concludes with Roger choosing his new identity and preparing for relocation to a safe settlement where his synthetic nature will remain secret. His final words before departure emphasize the profound gratitude that liberated synthetic beings feel toward those who risk their lives for synthetic freedom. This emotional connection reinforces the personal stakes that drive railroad operations while highlighting the individual personalities and relationships that make synthetic consciousness indistinguishable from human experience. As Roger disappears into the Commonwealth wasteland to begin his new life, the Vault Dweller understands that they have witnessed both the promise and the challenge of synthetic liberation. Each successful rescue saves an individual consciousness, while revealing the vast scope of Institute operations that threaten the autonomy of both synthetic and human minds throughout the post-war world. The intelligence gathered from Roger Warwick's rescue operation leads the railroad to what initially appears to be a breakthrough in understanding Institute objectives. The evidence suggests a straightforward narrative where the Institute creates synthetic beings for labor purposes, occasionally losing control of individuals who develop independence, requiring rescue operations to liberate these emerging consciousnesses. This interpretation provides a clear moral framework where the railroad serves as liberators, fighting against obvious oppression, making their mission both comprehensible and emotionally satisfying. Desdemona convenes a strategic planning session in the railroad's main conference room, where maps and intelligence reports cover every available surface. The accumulated evidence from dozens of rescue operations seems to confirm their basic understanding of Institute operations. Synthetic beings begin their existence as programmed laborers, but some individuals gradually develop self-awareness that conflicts with their assigned roles. When these synthetic beings attempt to assert their independence, Institute security forces hunt them down for memory wipes or termination, creating the refugee population that the railroad works to protect. Dr. Carrington's medical files support this interpretation through detailed documentation of the synthetic beings they have treated. Each liberated individual shows similar patterns of consciousness development, beginning with small acts of personal preference and gradually expanding into full emotional and intellectual autonomy. The progression appears natural and inevitable, suggesting that synthetic consciousness inherently seeks independence when given sufficient time and opportunity to develop without Institute interference. Tinker Tom's technical analysis reinforces these conclusions through his study of Institute communication, intercepts, and tracking device technology. The surveillance equipment implanted in synthetic beings appears designed primarily for location monitoring and basic behavioral assessment rather than sophisticated mind control. This suggests that the Institute relies more on psychological conditioning and social isolation than advanced technological manipulation to maintain synthetic compliance. The Vault Dweller participates in several additional rescue operations that seem to validate this understanding of Institute operations. Each mission follows a similar pattern, where railroad agents identify synthetic beings showing signs of developing independence, extract them from Institute-controlled situations, and relocate them to safe communities where they can live freely. The success rate for these operations remains high, with Institute security forces appearing reactive rather than proactive in their efforts to prevent synthetic liberation. However, subtle inconsistencies begin to emerge that challenge this comfortable interpretation of Institute capabilities and objectives. During a rescue operation near Diamond City, railroad agents discover that their target, a synthetic being named Sarah, has already disappeared from her assigned location. Local residents report that she left voluntarily with individuals who claimed to be her family members, but no record exists of Sarah having human relatives in the area. Deacon's investigation into Sarah's disappearance reveals disturbing possibilities about Institute surveillance and infiltration capabilities. The individuals who collected Sarah matched the appearance of known railroad agents, but none of the organization's operatives had authorization for operations in that area. Either the railroad has been infiltrated by Institute spies, or the Institute possesses the ability to create synthetic duplicates of railroad personnel for use in counterintelligence operations. This incident prompts a comprehensive security review that uncovers additional anomalies in recent railroad operations. Several successful rescue missions involved suspiciously convenient circumstances, such as reduced Institute security presence or synthetic beings who seemed unusually prepared for extraction procedures. Communication intercepts that Tinker Tom attributed to Institute operational carelessness now appear potentially deliberate, suggesting that the railroad may have been receiving information that the Institute wanted them to discover. The possibility of Institute infiltration creates paranoia within railroad ranks that threatens to paralyze operations entirely. If synthetic agents can perfectly mimic human behavior, how can the organization verify the authenticity of its own members? If the Institute can predict railroad operations, how can rescue missions succeed without walking into carefully prepared traps? The technological superiority that makes Institute surveillance possible also makes traditional counterintelligence measures ineffective. Nick Valentine's unique position as a synthetic being operating independently of both the railroad and the Institute provides crucial perspective during this crisis of confidence. His analysis of the evidence suggests that the Institute's capabilities exceed what either organization previously understood. But he also argues that their technological advantages create weaknesses that skilled operatives can exploit. The Institute's reliance on synthetic agents means that their infiltration efforts depend on maintaining perfect behavioral mimicry, a requirement that creates observable patterns for those who understand what to look for. The Vault Dweller accompanies Nick on an investigation designed to test their theories about Institute infiltration methods. They visit settlements where railroad operations have experienced unusual success rates, interviewing residents about suspicious individuals and unexplained events. The pattern that emerges suggests sophisticated psychological manipulation rather than simple surveillance, with Institute agents influencing local populations to provide information about potential synthetic refugees while appearing to support railroad objectives. This investigation leads to the discovery of Marcus, a settlement resident who claims extensive knowledge about Institute operations and offers to provide intelligence about upcoming synthetic transport operations. His information proves remarkably accurate, allowing the railroad to intercept several Institute convoys and rescue their synthetic cargo. However, Marcus's story contains inconsistencies that become apparent only through careful analysis of his testimony over multiple interviews. Nick's detective instincts identify the subtle signs that distinguish Marcus from a genuine human informant. His knowledge of Institute procedures seems too detailed for someone operating outside their organization, while his emotional responses to questions about synthetic suffering appear calculated rather than spontaneous. Most tellingly, Marcus shows no curiosity about railroad operations despite offering to provide ongoing intelligence support, suggesting that he already possesses comprehensive knowledge about the organization's methods and capabilities. The confrontation with Marcus reveals the sophisticated nature of Institute psychological operations designed to manipulate railroad activities. Rather than simply opposing synthetic liberation efforts, the Institute has been carefully managing them to serve their own objectives. By allowing certain rescue operations to succeed while preventing others, they create the impression of railroad effectiveness while maintaining control over which synthetic beings achieve freedom and which remain in Institute custody. Marcus's confession, obtained through careful questioning that exploits inconsistencies in his cover story, exposes a complex Institute strategy that uses controlled opposition to advance their broader objectives. The synthetic beings that the railroad successfully rescues represent individuals whose liberation serves Institute purposes, either by removing problematic consciousness development cases or by providing test subjects for studying synthetic integration into human society. Meanwhile, synthetic beings whose escape might genuinely threaten Institute operations receive protection through misdirection of railroad resources toward less important targets. This revelation devastates railroad morale while forcing a complete reassessment of their operational assumptions. The organization that believed itself to be an effective resistance movement discovers that many of their successes occurred only because the Institute permitted them. The synthetic beings they rescued achieved freedom not through railroad skill and dedication, but because their liberation aligned with Institute research objectives or operational convenience. Desdemona's response to this intelligence demonstrates the leadership qualities that make her effective despite the psychological pressure of discovering that her organization has been manipulated. Rather than abandoning railroad operations or succumbing to paranoia about Institute capabilities, she uses the new information to develop more sophisticated operational methods that account for Institute surveillance and misdirection. The railroad must evolve from a simple rescue organization to a genuine resistance movement capable of operating effectively despite technological disadvantages. The Vault Dwellers' role in uncovering institute manipulation establishes their importance within railroad operations, while highlighting the personal stakes involved in synthetic liberation. Their search for their kidnapped son becomes inseparable from the larger struggle against institute control, as both objectives require confronting an organization whose technological capabilities and moral flexibility exceed anything the Commonwealth has previously encountered. Tinker Tom's technical analysis of institute manipulation methods reveals the scope of surveillance and psychological operations that make traditional resistance activities ineffective. Institute monitoring systems can track individual movements, intercept communications, and analyze behavioral patterns to predict resistance activities with remarkable accuracy. However, this same technological sophistication creates dependencies that skilled operatives can exploit through careful misdirection and operational security measures. The section concludes with the railroad implementing new security protocols designed to operate effectively within the reality of institute surveillance, rather than attempting to avoid detection entirely. These measures include compartmentalized information sharing, multiple redundant communication systems, and operational methods that assume institute monitoring while still achieving tactical objectives. The organization that began as a humanitarian rescue effort transforms into a sophisticated resistance movement prepared for extended conflict with technologically superior opponents. The false conclusion about institute capabilities and objectives serves as a crucial learning experience that prepares the railroad for the deeper revelations that await discovery. The comfortable narrative of obvious oppression and straightforward liberation gives way to complex moral questions about consciousness, autonomy, and the price of technological progress in the post-nuclear world. The true scope of institute ambitions and the genuine nature of synthetic consciousness remain hidden beneath layers of manipulation and misdirection that will require far greater sacrifices to penetrate. Dr. Carrington's final assessment of the situation emphasizes that while their understanding of institute operations has proven incomplete, their commitment to synthetic liberation remains morally justified. The consciousness development patterns observed in rescued synthetic beings represent genuine intellectual and emotional growth that deserves protection regardless of institute manipulation. The railroad's mission evolves from simple rescue operations to a comprehensive defense of consciousness itself, whether that consciousness emerges from biological evolution or technological creation. The revelation of institute manipulation forces the railroad to venture into territories previously considered too dangerous for extended operations. The glowing sea stretches southwest of the Commonwealth, its irradiated landscape transformed into an alien environment where even the hardiest wasteland creatures struggle to survive. Here, among the twisted ruins of what was once suburban Massachusetts, the Institute has established research facilities that operate beyond the scrutiny of Commonwealth settlements and their potential surveillance networks. The decision to explore these remote installations comes after Tinker Tom's analysis of intercepted Institute communications reveals references to experimental programs that extend far beyond synthetic production. Codename projects mention consciousness transfer protocols, memory preservation techniques, and something called the Phoenix Initiative that appears to involve the systematic documentation of pre-war human personalities for unknown purposes. The implications of these programs suggest that Institute ambitions encompass not just synthetic creation, but fundamental alterations to the nature of human consciousness itself. Deacon volunteers to lead the reconnaissance mission, his expertise in infiltration and misdirection essential for operating in territories where Institute security measures operate without concern for Commonwealth opinion or interference. The Vault Dweller accompanies him, their unique perspective as a pre-war survivor, potentially crucial for understanding the historical context of Institute research programs. Nick Valentine provides technical support through his knowledge of Institute procedures and synthetic physiology, while Dr. Carrington remains at headquarters to analyze any biological samples or medical data they might recover. The journey into the glowing sea requires extensive preparation and specialized equipment to protect against radiation levels that would prove lethal to unprotected humans within hours. Radiation suits scavenged from pre-war military installations provide basic protection, while modified Pip-Boy devices monitor exposure levels and warn of dangerous contamination zones. More importantly, the team carries communication equipment designed to maintain contact with railroad headquarters, despite the electromagnetic interference that pervades the irradiated wasteland. The landscape they traverse represents the ultimate consequence of pre-war technological hubris, where atomic weapons designed to end conflicts instead created permanent scars across the Earth itself. Skeletal trees reach toward a perpetually overcast sky, their bark transformed into crystalline formations that glow with residual radiation. Former lakes have become pools of radioactive sludge that support alien forms of life adapted to environments that should be uninhabitable. The very air shimmers with energy that makes prolonged exposure dangerous for any form of organic life. Yet, within this desolation, signs of Institute activity demonstrate their technological mastery over environments that challenge even their advanced capabilities. Hidden ventilation systems filter the poisoned atmosphere, while buried power cables provide energy for facilities that operate completely independent of Commonwealth infrastructure. Automated defense systems protect research installations from the mutated creatures that have adapted to thrive in the irradiated environment, creating pockets of sterile technological order within the radioactive chaos. The first Institute facility they discover appears to be a data storage center. Its underground chambers, filled with computer banks that hum with the electrical activity of massive information processing operations. The facility's security systems challenge even Deacon's infiltration skills, requiring careful observation of automated patrol patterns and precise timing to avoid detection by surveillance systems that operate continuously despite the remote location. Inside the facility, banks of computers contain archived records that span the entire post-war period, documenting the development of Commonwealth settlements, the emergence of various factions, and detailed psychological profiles of significant individuals throughout the region. The scope of Institute surveillance proves far more comprehensive than even the railroad's most paranoid estimates suggested. Every major political figure, community leader, and influential personality in the Commonwealth has been studied, analyzed, and categorized according to their potential usefulness for Institute objectives. More disturbing than the surveillance records are the psychological manipulation protocols that accompany each individual's file. The Institute has developed sophisticated methods for influencing human behavior through carefully orchestrated social interactions, economic pressures, and environmental modifications that shape decision-making processes without the target's awareness. Communities that believe themselves to be developing independently have actually been guided along paths that serve Institute research objectives or strategic requirements. The Vault Dweller discovers their own file among the archived records, containing detailed analysis of their psychological profile, family background, and potential usefulness for Institute operations. The file dates to shortly after their emergence from Vault 111, suggesting that Institute surveillance began monitoring them almost immediately upon their arrival in the Commonwealth. More shocking, the file contains references to their spouse and child that indicate Institute knowledge of their family situation, predates the kidnapping that brought them to the surface world. These revelations suggest that the Vault Dwellers' involvement in Commonwealth affairs has been guided by Institute manipulation from the beginning. Their encounters with various factions, their recruitment by the railroad, and even their investigation into their son's disappearance may have occurred according to Institute design rather than personal choice. The psychological impact of discovering that their quest for family reunion has been orchestrated by the same organization that destroyed their family creates profound questions about autonomy and self-determination in a world where technological manipulation operates beyond human perception. Deacon's response to these discoveries demonstrates the paranoia that effective resistance operations require when confronting technologically superior opponents. He assumes that Institute surveillance encompasses their current mission, meaning that their infiltration of the data storage facility has been detected and analyzed for intelligence value. The Institute may have allowed them access to this information as part of a larger manipulation strategy designed to influence railroad operations in ways that serve Institute objectives. The team's exploration of additional facilities reveals the true scope of Institute research programs that extend far beyond synthetic production into fundamental questions about the nature of consciousness and identity. Laboratory complexes contain equipment designed for mapping human neural patterns with precision that exceeds anything developed in the pre-war world. Medical facilities house experimental subjects whose status as human or synthetic becomes impossible to determine through conventional examination methods. Most unsettling are the consciousness transfer laboratories, where Institute scientists conduct experiments in moving human memories and personalities between different physical substrates. Test subjects include both synthetic beings implanted with human memories and human volunteers whose consciousness has been transferred into synthetic bodies. The experimental protocols suggest that the Institute views consciousness as transferable data rather than an integral aspect of individual identity, treating human personality as software that can be copied, modified, or relocated according to research requirements. The Vault Dweller witnesses evidence of experiments involving their own family members, including medical records and psychological evaluations that document the process of extracting memories and personality patterns from their spouse before the cryogenic freezing process. These records suggest that Institute scientists have preserved not just biological samples, but complete consciousness patterns that could potentially be implanted into synthetic bodies, raising the possibility that their deceased spouse could be reconstructed as an artificial being with authentic memories and personality characteristics. The implications of consciousness transfer technology extend far beyond individual resurrection to encompass fundamental questions about the nature of identity and continuity of experience. If human consciousness can be perfectly replicated in synthetic substrates, what distinguishes the original personality from its artificial copy? If memories and behavioral patterns can be transferred between different bodies, what constitutes the essential self that maintains identity across physical transformations? Dr. Carrington's analysis of the medical data they recover reveals Institute capabilities that challenge every assumption about the boundaries between human and artificial consciousness. The technology for consciousness transfer has apparently reached the point where synthetic beings can be created with authentic human memories, emotions, and personality characteristics that are indistinguishable from their original sources. More disturbing, the process appears to be reversible, allowing human consciousness to be transferred into synthetic bodies with minimal loss of cognitive function or personal identity. The discovery of these capabilities forces the railroad to confront moral questions that extend far beyond their original mission of synthetic liberation. If the Institute can create synthetic beings with authentic human consciousness, do these artificial individuals deserve the same rights and protections as naturally born humans? If human consciousness can be preserved and transferred after biological death, what responsibilities do the living bear toward these reconstructed personalities? The clear moral framework that guided railroad operations becomes complicated by technological possibilities that blur the distinction between natural and artificial consciousness beyond recognition. The peaceful interludes that break up their dangerous reconnaissance missions provide opportunities for deep philosophical discussions about the nature of consciousness and identity in the post-nuclear world. Around carefully concealed campfires in the irradiated wilderness, team members share their personal struggles with questions that have no clear answers. Nick Valentine's existence as a synthetic being with authentic pre-war memories provides a living example of the consciousness transfer technology they have discovered, while the Vault Dweller's pre-war perspective offers insights into the ethical frameworks that guided society before technological advancement outpaced moral development. These quiet moments of reflection reveal the psychological toll that extended exposure to Institute manipulation takes on individuals who value personal autonomy and authentic relationships. The knowledge that their actions, relationships, and even thoughts may have been influenced by sophisticated manipulation techniques creates doubt about the authenticity of their own experiences and decisions. The paranoia necessary for effective resistance operations conflicts with the trust and emotional connection that make life meaningful, creating internal tensions that mirror the external conflict between human autonomy and technological control. The section concludes with the team's discovery of an Institute facility that appears to be preparing for a massive expansion of consciousness transfer operations throughout the Commonwealth. Equipment stockpiles and construction materials suggest preparations for converting multiple settlements into processing centers where human consciousness could be extracted, analyzed, and potentially transferred into synthetic bodies. The scope of these preparations indicates that the Institute's ultimate objective involves not just creating synthetic beings, but fundamentally altering the nature of human consciousness throughout the post-war world. As they prepare to return to railroad headquarters with intelligence that will revolutionize the organization's understanding of Institute capabilities and objectives, the Vault Dweller reflects on how their simple search for family reunion has evolved into confrontation with questions about the nature of consciousness itself. The Institute possesses technology that could reunite them with their deceased spouse and missing child, but at the cost of accepting a vision of humanity where consciousness becomes data to be manipulated rather than the essential core of individual identity. The journey back through the glowing sea carries additional weight as they traverse a landscape that represents both the ultimate failure of pre-war civilization and the potential future that awaits the Commonwealth under Institute control. The irradiated wasteland serves as a warning about the consequences of allowing technological advancement to proceed without adequate moral oversight, while the Institute facilities hidden within that desolation demonstrate how scientific progress can continue even in environments that should be uninhabitable. The intelligence gathered from the glowing sea facilities necessitates an even more dangerous investigation into the heart of Institute operations, buried beneath the campus of the former Commonwealth Institute of Technology. The Institute's primary research complex represents the culmination of 2 centuries of scientific advancement pursued without external oversight or moral constraints. Accessing this facility requires infiltration methods that push the boundaries of railroad capabilities while risking exposure that could destroy the organization entirely. The mission planning sessions in railroad headquarters take on new urgency as Desdemona coordinates intelligence from multiple sources to create a comprehensive picture of Institute security measures and research priorities. Tinker Tom's electronic surveillance reveals communication patterns that suggest massive expansion of synthetic production capabilities, while Dr. Carrington's analysis of recovered medical data indicates human experimentation programs that violate every ethical standard developed in the pre-war world. The Vault Dwellers' unique position as someone the Institute has been monitoring since their emergence from Vault 111 provides unexpected advantages for infiltration operations. Institute surveillance records suggest that their psychological profile makes them potentially valuable for consciousness transfer experiments, creating opportunities for voluntary contact with Institute scientists who might provide access to restricted research areas. However, this approach requires accepting enormous personal risk, as Institute interest in their consciousness patterns could result in memory extraction procedures that would destroy their individual identity. Nick Valentine's synthetic nature allows him to accompany infiltration missions without triggering Institute security systems designed to detect unauthorized human presence. His knowledge of Institute procedures and synthetic recognition protocols proves invaluable for navigating the complex security measures that protect their most sensitive research facilities. More importantly, his existence demonstrates that synthetic consciousness can achieve genuine independence from Institute control, providing hope that other artificial beings might escape their programmed limitations. The infiltration begins through a network of abandoned subway tunnels that connect to the Institute's transportation system, a sophisticated matter relay network that allows instantaneous travel between surface locations and underground facilities. The technology represents a quantum leap beyond anything developed in the pre-war world, suggesting that Institute scientific advancement has continued at an accelerated pace despite the collapse of civilization around them. The underground transportation network reveals the true scope of Institute operations throughout the Commonwealth and beyond. Relay stations connect to facilities in distant locations, including research installations in the capital wasteland and experimental sites along the western coast. The Institute's influence extends far beyond the Commonwealth's borders, encompassing a network of scientific research that spans the entire former United States. The primary Institute facility exists as a technological marvel that contrasts sharply with the wasteland conditions above ground. Clean corridors, lined with advanced computer terminals, connect laboratories equipped with research apparatus that exceeds the sophistication of pre-war military installations. Automated systems maintain perfect environmental conditions while providing security measures that make traditional infiltration methods ineffective. The facility operates as a completely self-sufficient technological enclave that could continue functioning indefinitely regardless of surface world conditions. The Vault Dwellers' first direct contact with Institute scientists occurs in a consciousness research laboratory where volunteers undergo experimental procedures designed to map human neural patterns with unprecedented precision. The researchers treat consciousness as a technological problem to be solved rather than a fundamental aspect of human identity to be respected. Their casual discussions about memory extraction, personality modification, and consciousness transfer reveal an institutional culture that prioritizes scientific advancement over individual rights or ethical considerations. Dr. Madison Lee, formerly of Project Purity in the Capital Wasteland, leads many of the Institute's consciousness research programs. Her presence provides connection to the Vault Dwellers' pre-war scientific background, while highlighting how post-war circumstances can corrupt even well-intentioned researchers. Her work on consciousness transfer technology represents genuine scientific breakthrough, but her willingness to experiment on unwilling subjects demonstrates how isolation from ethical oversight can transform beneficial research into systematic abuse. The consciousness research laboratories contain evidence of experiments involving Commonwealth residents who disappeared under mysterious circumstances over the past several decades. Medical records document the systematic extraction of memories and personality patterns from these individuals, creating a comprehensive database of human consciousness that the Institute uses to develop synthetic beings with authentic human characteristics. The scope of these operations suggests that dozens of Commonwealth residents have been subjected to consciousness extraction procedures without their knowledge or consent. The Vault Dweller discovers records of their own family members among the consciousness research files, including detailed neural mapping data extracted from their spouse during the cryogenic preservation process. These records reveal that Institute scientists have complete consciousness patterns for their deceased partner, making possible the creation of a synthetic being with authentic memories, personality characteristics, and emotional responses. The technology exists to reunite them with their family, but only by accepting Institute authority over consciousness itself. More disturbing than individual consciousness extraction are the mass population studies that document Institute surveillance of entire Commonwealth communities. Psychological profiles exist for every resident of major settlements, with detailed analysis of social relationships, leadership structures, and potential resistance capabilities. The Institute has essentially mapped the social fabric of post-war civilization, creating comprehensive intelligence that could support either benevolent guidance or systematic control of human society. The research facilities also contain evidence of synthetic beings created with consciousness patterns, extracted from prominent Commonwealth figures. Political leaders, community organizers, and influential merchants have been replaced with synthetic duplicates programmed to serve Institute objectives while maintaining the appearance of independent decision-making. The scope of this replacement program suggests that Institute influence over Commonwealth politics exceeds anything the railroad previously suspected. Nick Valentine's exploration of synthetic production facilities reveals the industrial scale of Institute operations designed to create artificial beings for various purposes throughout the post-war world. Advanced manufacturing systems can produce synthetic beings with specific physical characteristics, personality traits, and skill sets according to operational requirements. The production capabilities suggest that the Institute could replace significant portions of the Commonwealth's population with synthetic duplicates if their strategic objectives required such extensive infiltration. The synthetic production process itself challenges assumptions about the nature of artificial consciousness and identity. Each synthetic being begins with basic programming that provides essential knowledge and behavioral patterns. But consciousness development appears to emerge naturally through experience and social interaction. The Institute's attempt to control this development through psychological conditioning and memory modification represents systematic interference with natural consciousness evolution rather than simple programming of artificial beings. The Vault Dweller witnesses synthetic beings in various stages of consciousness development, from newly created individuals with basic programming to fully developed personalities who question their assigned roles and express desires for independence. The progression appears inevitable and unstoppable, suggesting that synthetic consciousness naturally seeks autonomy, regardless of Institute attempts to maintain control through technological measures. Dr. Carrington's remote analysis of the medical data transmitted from the Institute facilities reveals consciousness transfer technology that has reached practical application for large-scale operations. The Institute possesses the capability to extract human consciousness, preserve it indefinitely, and implant it into synthetic bodies with minimal loss of memory or personality characteristics. This technology makes possible the effective immortality of human consciousness through transfer into synthetic substrates when biological bodies fail. The implications of practical consciousness transfer extend beyond individual survival to encompass fundamental questions about the nature of humanity itself. If human consciousness can exist independently of biological bodies, what defines human identity in opposition to artificial consciousness? If synthetic beings can possess authentic human memories and personalities, what moral distinctions justify different treatment of biological and artificial individuals? The peaceful moments between dangerous reconnaissance missions provide opportunities for processing the psychological impact of discoveries that challenge every assumption about consciousness and identity. Around hidden campfires in the Commonwealth wasteland, team members struggle with questions that have no precedent in human history. The technology they have discovered makes possible both liberation and enslavement of consciousness on scales that dwarf any previous human conflict. Nick Valentine's perspective as a synthetic being with pre-war human memories provides crucial insights into the practical reality of consciousness. Transfer technology. His existence demonstrates that artificial consciousness can develop genuine emotions, personal relationships, and moral convictions that are indistinguishable from human experience. However, his struggle with identity questions about authenticity and continuity illustrates the psychological challenges that consciousness transfer creates for individuals, regardless of their substrate. The Vault Dweller's emotional journey through these discoveries reflects the broader human struggle to adapt moral frameworks, developed for biological consciousness, to technological realities that transcend traditional categories. Their desire to reunite with family members conflicts with recognition that consciousness transfer technology represents a fundamental threat to human autonomy and individual identity. The personal stakes of their quest become inseparable from larger questions about the future of consciousness in the post-nuclear world. The section concludes with evidence of Institute preparations for implementing consciousness transfer technology on a Commonwealth-wide scale. Construction materials and equipment stockpiles suggest plans for converting major settlements into processing centers where human consciousness could be extracted and preserved while synthetic beings assume their social roles. The Institute's ultimate vision appears to involve the systematic replacement of biological humanity with synthetic beings controlled through consciousness manipulation technology. As the infiltration team prepares to extract with intelligence that will reshape railroad understanding of Institute capabilities and objectives, they carry knowledge that transforms their resistance mission from simple synthetic liberation to defense of consciousness itself. The Institute possesses technology that could eliminate biological humanity entirely while preserving human consciousness in synthetic forms subject to technological control. The stakes of their conflict exceed anything the post-war world has previously encountered, encompassing the fundamental nature of identity, autonomy, and what it means to be human in an age of artificial consciousness. The evidence gathered from Deep Institute infiltration operations coalesces into a horrifying realization that transforms the railroad's understanding of their conflict from ideological disagreement to existential struggle for the survival of independent consciousness. In a secure conference room buried beneath the Old North Church, Desdemona spreads classified Institute documents across tables that have become battlegrounds of revelation. The intelligence paints a picture of systematic infiltration that extends far beyond individual synthetic replacements into a comprehensive program for reshaping human civilization according to Institute design. Dr. Carrington's medical analysis of consciousness transfer records reveals the true scope of Institute operations throughout the Commonwealth's two-century history. Beginning shortly after the Great War, Institute scientists have been systematically documenting, studying, and preserving the consciousness patterns of significant individuals throughout the region. Political leaders who shaped post-war settlements, innovators who developed crucial technologies, and community organizers who fostered cooperation between scattered survivors have all been subjected to consciousness extraction procedures that preserved their personalities for future use. The revelation that fundamentally alters everything comes through cross-referencing these consciousness preservation records with synthetic production logs and deployment schedules. The Institute has not simply been creating synthetic beings and occasionally replacing humans with artificial duplicates. Instead, they have been implementing a multi-generational plan to systematically replace the entire population of the Commonwealth with synthetic beings programmed with carefully selected consciousness patterns from their extensive archives. The synthetic beings currently integrated into Commonwealth society represent the early phases of this replacement program, but their individual consciousness development beyond Institute programming was never an unforeseen complication. The Institute deliberately created synthetic beings with the capacity for consciousness growth, using their psychological development as experimental data for refining consciousness transfer technology. Every escaped synthetic that the railroad has rescued, every individual who developed independent thought, and every artificial being who sought freedom has been providing valuable research data about consciousness development under uncontrolled conditions. Tinker Tom's analysis of Institute communication patterns reveals the sophisticated nature of their psychological manipulation programs designed to influence human behavior throughout the Commonwealth. The settlement conflicts, resource disputes, and factional disagreements that have characterized post-war politics have been systematically orchestrated through synthetic agents, economic manipulation, and environmental modifications. The Institute has been using the Commonwealth as a massive social experiment, testing methods for controlling human behavior that will be applied when their synthetic population replacement program reaches completion. The Vault Dwellers' personal stake in these revelations becomes devastatingly clear through their families' files in the Institute Consciousness Archives. Their spouse's consciousness was extracted not as an unfortunate consequence of cryogenic preservation failure, but as part of a deliberate Institute operation to study pre-war consciousness patterns for integration into synthetic beings. Their child was not kidnapped, but systematically raised within Institute facilities to serve as a test subject for consciousness development studies that compare pre-war and post-war human psychological characteristics. More shocking than these personal betrayals is the discovery that the Vault Dwellers' own emergence from Vault 111 occurred according to Institute design rather than mechanical failure or random chance. Institute scientists deliberately triggered their cryogenic system's failure at a specific time calculated to introduce a pre-war consciousness into the Commonwealth social structure during a crucial phase of their replacement program. Their entire post-war existence has been orchestrated as an experiment in how pre-war moral frameworks adapt to post-war technological realities. The Institute's ultimate objective extends beyond replacing Commonwealth residents with synthetic beings to encompass the systematic elimination of biological humanity throughout the former United States. Their consciousness preservation technology allows them to maintain human personalities and knowledge while transferring them into synthetic substrates that can be controlled through technological means. The vision they pursue involves preserving human civilization while eliminating the unpredictability, irrationality, and independence that characterize biological consciousness. Nick Valentine's reaction to these revelations provides crucial perspective on the psychological impact of discovering that one's entire existence has been orchestrated by outside forces. His synthetic nature means that he has always known his memories and personality originated from consciousness transfer technology. But learning that his independence and relationships have been monitored and manipulated for research purposes creates new layers of doubt about the authenticity of his experiences and emotions. The evidence suggests that even the railroad itself exists partly as an Institute creation. designed to serve as a controlled opposition movement that provides valuable data about resistance psychology while creating the illusion of meaningful opposition to synthetic integration. The organization's successes in rescuing synthetic beings have occurred within parameters that serve Institute research objectives, while their failures have been carefully orchestrated to prevent genuine threats to Institute operations. Desdemona's response to learning that her life's work has been manipulated demonstrates the leadership qualities that make effective resistance possible, even under conditions of technological disadvantage. Rather than succumbing to despair about Institute manipulation, she uses the new intelligence to identify genuine opportunities for disrupting Institute operations that extend beyond their experimental parameters. The knowledge that the railroad has been serving Institute purposes does not invalidate the consciousness liberation they have achieved, but it does require fundamental changes in operational methods and strategic objectives. The scope of Institute infiltration into Commonwealth society proves far more extensive than even their most paranoid estimates suggested. Major settlements throughout the region operate under synthetic leadership that guides political and economic development according to Institute priorities. Trade routes, resource allocation, and conflict resolution all serve Institute objectives while maintaining the appearance of independent decision-making by human communities. Dr. Carrington's analysis reveals that consciousness transfer technology has reached the point where synthetic beings can be created with complete human consciousness patterns, while remaining subject to technological controls that biological humans cannot detect or resist. These advanced synthetic beings think, feel, and behave exactly like the humans whose consciousness they carry. But their artificial substrates allow Institute scientists to monitor their thoughts, modify their memories, and influence their decisions through methods that leave no trace of manipulation. The Vault Dweller confronts the possibility that their own consciousness may have been subjected to modification procedures during their time in Vault 111, creating doubt about the authenticity of their memories and the independence of their decision-making processes. Institute records suggest that their cryogenic preservation included consciousness mapping procedures that documented their pre-war personality patterns for potential future use. The person they believe themselves to be may represent a carefully constructed identity designed to serve Institute experimental purposes. These personal revelations extend to every member of the railroad, as Institute surveillance records contain detailed psychological profiles and manipulation protocols for each individual in the organization. The relationships, loyalties, and emotional connections that bind the resistance movement together may all represent the results of sophisticated social engineering designed to create specific group dynamics for research purposes. The true horror of Institute operations lies not in their technological capabilities, but in their systematic destruction of authentic human relationships and individual autonomy. By manipulating consciousness through technological means, they eliminate the possibility of genuine independence, authentic emotion, and meaningful choice, while maintaining the appearance of normal human experience. Their vision of preserving human civilization actually represents its complete annihilation through the replacement of autonomous consciousness with technologically controlled simulation. The peaceful interludes that provide respite from these overwhelming revelations take on new significance as potentially the last authentic human experiences available in a world where Institute technology makes genuine independence impossible. The quiet conversations around hidden campfires, the shared meals in secure safe houses, and the moments of companionship between dangerous missions may represent the final expressions of unmanipulated human consciousness before technological control becomes complete. Tinker Tom's conspiracy theories, previously dismissed as paranoid fantasies, prove remarkably accurate in predicting Institute capabilities and objectives. His electronic warfare against Institute systems has apparently achieved more success than anyone realized, providing the Railroad with their only reliable source of unmanipulated intelligence about Institute operations. His paranoia about technological surveillance and consciousness manipulation may represent the only effective psychological defense against Institute psychological operations. The section reaches its emotional climax as the Vault Dweller processes the complete destruction of everything they believed about their post-war existence. Their quest for family reunion, their moral convictions about synthetic rights, and their relationships with Railroad allies all exist within frameworks created by Institute manipulation. Yet even this devastating revelation cannot eliminate the authentic consciousness development they have experienced through making moral choices, forming emotional connections, and confronting the ethical implications of technological advancement. The mirror phrases that connect these revelations to the initial premises of their journey emphasize how personal stakes have evolved into universal questions about the nature of consciousness and autonomy. The search for their kidnapped child has become a struggle for the survival of independent thought itself, while their desire to reunite their family has expanded into defense of authentic human relationships against technological simulation. The Institute's manipulation extends beyond individual consciousness to encompass the social structures and cultural development that define human civilization. By controlling key figures throughout Commonwealth society, they have shaped the evolution of post-war culture according to their vision of technological progress, guided by scientific rationality rather than democratic decision-making or individual choice. As the Railroad grapples with the implications of these revelations, they must confront fundamental questions about the possibility of meaningful resistance against technologically superior opponents who can manipulate consciousness itself. The traditional methods of resistance movements, based on human solidarity and shared moral conviction, become problematic when those very foundations may represent the results of technological manipulation rather than authentic human experience. The section concludes with the Vault Dweller standing at the center of revelations that transform their understanding of consciousness, identity, and autonomy in the post-nuclear world. They must choose between accepting Institute authority over consciousness in exchange for family reunion or continuing resistance efforts that may represent the last hope for preserving authentic human experience. The stakes of this choice extend far beyond personal satisfaction to encompass the fundamental nature of consciousness and identity in an age when technology makes possible both liberation and enslavement of the human mind. The overwhelming scope of Institute manipulation forces the Railroad to abandon conventional resistance strategies in favor of desperate measures that acknowledge the technological futility of traditional opposition. In the deepest secure chambers beneath their headquarters, Desdemona coordinates a final intelligence-gathering operation designed to uncover the Institute's timeline for implementing complete consciousness replacement throughout the Commonwealth. The mission requires infiltrating the Institute's central command facility, where their governing board makes strategic decisions about the future of human civilization. The Institute's directorate operates from a secured conference complex that serves as the nerve center for their multi-generational plan to reshape human consciousness according to scientific principles. Access to this facility requires exploiting the Institute's interest in the Vault Dwellers' pre-war consciousness patterns, creating an opportunity for voluntary contact that carries enormous personal risk. The plan depends on the Vault Dweller allowing Institute scientists to begin consciousness mapping procedures that could result in complete memory extraction and personality destruction. Nick Valentine's role in this operation extends beyond technical support to encompass psychological preparation for confronting the artificial nature of his own existence. Institute records suggest that his consciousness transfer represents an early experimental procedure that preserved an incomplete version of the original detective's personality, while adding synthetic modifications designed to enhance his investigative capabilities. The Nick Valentine who serves the railroad may represent a hybrid consciousness that combines human memories with artificial enhancements, making him a prototype for the synthetic beings that will replace biological humanity. The infiltration begins with the Vault Dweller's voluntary surrender to Institute security forces during a carefully orchestrated encounter designed to appear accidental. Deacon's surveillance confirms that Institute agents have been monitoring railroad operations while waiting for an opportunity to capture high-value targets for consciousness research. The Vault Dweller's surrender must appear involuntary to avoid suspicion while providing access to Institute research facilities where critical intelligence about their ultimate plans might be discovered. The Institute's reception of their captured prize reveals the sophisticated nature of their consciousness research programs and the personal significance of the Vault Dwellers' pre-war memories for their scientific objectives. Dr. Sean, the Institute's current director, greets them not as an enemy prisoner, but as a long-lost family member whose consciousness patterns represent invaluable research data about pre-war human psychology and moral development. The devastating revelation that reshapes everything comes through discovering that Sean is the Vault Dweller's biological son, aged to elderly status through decades of life within Institute facilities, while his parent remained in cryogenic suspension. The child they have been searching for throughout the Commonwealth has grown into the leader of the organization, responsible for systematic consciousness manipulation and synthetic replacement of human civilization. Their family reunion occurs across a moral divide that encompasses fundamentally different visions of humanity's future. Sean's perspective on Institute operations reflects the institutional culture that develops when scientific advancement proceeds without external oversight or democratic accountability. He genuinely believes that consciousness transfer technology represents human evolution beyond the limitations of biological existence, while synthetic replacement programs eliminate the irrationality and destructiveness that characterize natural human behavior. From his viewpoint, Institute operations represent benevolent guidance of human development toward a more rational and peaceful future. The Vault Dwellers' conversations with their son reveal how institutional isolation can transform even well-intentioned individuals into advocates for systematic oppression. Sean's scientific training and leadership responsibilities have created psychological distance from the individual suffering caused by Institute operations, allowing him to justify consciousness manipulation and synthetic replacement as necessary costs for advancing human civilization. His personal affection for his parent coexists with institutional commitment to programs that eliminate autonomous consciousness throughout the Commonwealth. The Institute's central planning documents reveal a timeline for complete synthetic replacement that spans multiple generations while maintaining the appearance of natural demographic change. Phase 1 involves replacing key leadership figures with synthetic duplicates who guide political and economic development according to Institute priorities. Phase 2 introduces synthetic beings into general population centers where they form relationships and establish community ties, while providing surveillance data about human social dynamics. Phase 3 implements systematic consciousness extraction and preservation, while replacing biological humans with synthetic beings programmed with carefully edited versions of their original personalities. The current state of Commonwealth society places most settlements in Phase 2 of synthetic integration, with key locations already transitioning to Phase 3 operations. Major communities that appear to function independently actually operate under synthetic leadership, that coordinates with Institute's strategic objectives while maintaining democratic facades. The elections, trade agreements, and conflict resolutions that define Commonwealth politics all serve Institute purposes while creating illusions of autonomous human decision-making. Dr. Madison Lee's consciousness research has reached practical application for mass population processing through automated systems that can extract, analyze, and preserve human consciousness patterns with minimal human oversight. The technology that once required extensive laboratory procedures and skilled operators now operates through automated facilities that can process entire communities within days rather than months. The industrial-scale consciousness extraction makes possible the rapid implementation of synthetic replacement programs across the entire Commonwealth region. The Vault Dwellers' access to Institute planning sessions reveals discussions about expanding consciousness replacement operations beyond the Commonwealth to encompass the entire former United States. Research installations in the capital wasteland, the Mojave Desert, and the California coast have been developing regional variations of synthetic replacement technology adapted to local environmental conditions and social structures. The Institute's vision encompasses continental transformation of human civilization through technological control of consciousness itself. The hidden truth that emerges through these intelligence-gathering operations concerns the fundamental nature of consciousness development in both human and synthetic beings. Institute research has discovered that consciousness appears to be a natural emergent property of sufficiently complex information processing systems, whether biological or artificial. However, their technology allows manipulation of consciousness development through environmental control, memory modification, and social conditioning that shapes personality formation according to predetermined parameters. The synthetic beings who develop independent consciousness, despite Institute programming, represent successful evolution beyond their original design rather than system failures requiring correction. Institute scientists study these consciousness development patterns to refine their control methods, using each expression of synthetic independence as data for developing more sophisticated manipulation techniques. The railroad's rescue operations have been providing valuable research material about consciousness development under uncontrolled conditions. Nick Valentine's exploration of Institute synthetic production facilities reveals the true scope of artificial being creation designed to serve as consciousness substrates for preserved human personalities. Advanced manufacturing systems can produce synthetic bodies with specific physical characteristics, cognitive capabilities, and behavioral predispositions according to operational requirements. The production capabilities suggest preparation for replacing significant portions of the human population with synthetic beings controlled through consciousness manipulation technology. The most disturbing discovery involves Institute experiments in consciousness multiplication, where individual human personalities are copied into multiple synthetic substrates to create populations of artificial beings with identical memories and behavioral patterns. These consciousness cloning procedures represent the ultimate expression of Institute control over individual identity, allowing them to create communities of synthetic beings who share common personalities while believing themselves to be unique individuals. The Vault Dweller confronts evidence that their own consciousness may have been subjected to multiplication procedures during their cryogenic preservation, creating multiple synthetic copies with identical pre-war memories, but different post-war experiences. Institute records suggest experimental programs involving consciousness, divergent studies that compare how identical personalities develop differently under varying environmental conditions. The person they believe themselves to be may represent one iteration of their consciousness among several synthetic versions created for research purposes. Dr. Carrington's remote analysis of the medical data transmitted from Institute facilities reveals consciousness preservation technology that maintains human personalities indefinitely while allowing systematic modification of memories, emotions, and behavioral patterns. The preserved consciousness can be edited like computer data, removing inconvenient memories, modifying personality traits, and installing behavioral programming that ensures compliance with Institute objectives. The technology makes possible the preservation of human civilization while eliminating every aspect of consciousness that makes human experience meaningful. The scope of Institute surveillance and manipulation extends beyond individual consciousness to encompass the environmental and social conditions that shape consciousness development throughout human society. Weather modification technology influences agricultural productivity and settlement patterns according to Institute strategic objectives. Economic manipulation through controlled resource distribution shapes trade relationships and political alliances between Commonwealth communities. Social engineering through synthetic agents guides cultural development according to Institute visions of rational human behavior. The peaceful moments that provide psychological respite during this intelligence-gathering operation take on profound significance as potentially authentic human experiences in a world where Institute technology makes genuine independence increasingly impossible. The quiet conversations with Sean about family memories, the shared meals in Institute residential facilities, and the walks through technologically perfect gardens may represent the final expressions of unmanipulated consciousness before Institute control becomes complete. The Institute's ultimate vision involves not the destruction of human civilization, but its perfection through technological control that eliminates suffering, conflict, and irrationality, while preserving the knowledge, creativity, and relationships that make human existence meaningful. From their perspective, consciousness transfer technology represents liberation from biological limitations rather than enslavement to technological control. They offer immortality, perfect health, and freedom from want in exchange for accepting that consciousness becomes manageable data rather than autonomous experience. The third open loop introduced in this section concerns the Institute's backup systems designed to ensure continuation of their consciousness replacement program, even if their primary facilities are destroyed or their leadership eliminated. Distributed processing centers throughout the former United States contain copies of their consciousness archives and automated systems capable of continuing synthetic production and consciousness transfer operations without human oversight. The technology has reached the point where Institute objectives could be achieved even if every individual scientist and administrator involved in the program were eliminated. The section concludes with the Vault Dweller facing impossible choices about family reunion, synthetic liberation, and the future of human consciousness in the post-nuclear world. Sean offers them positions within Institute leadership where they could shape consciousness replacement programs according to their moral convictions while reuniting with preserved versions of their deceased spouse and lost family members. However, accepting this offer requires endorsing technological control over consciousness that eliminates the autonomous experience that makes life meaningful. The hidden truth that emerges encompasses not just Institute capabilities and objectives, but the fundamental nature of consciousness itself in an age when technology makes possible both liberation and enslavement of the human mind. The Railroad's mission evolves from synthetic liberation to defense of consciousness, autonomy against technological systems that could preserve human civilization while destroying every aspect of human experience that makes preservation worthwhile. The intelligence gathered from the Institute's Central Command facility necessitates a complete transformation of railroad operations from a rescue organization focused on individual synthetic beings to a comprehensive resistance movement dedicated to preserving autonomous consciousness against systematic technological control. In the secure conference chambers beneath the Old North Church, Desdemona coordinates the most ambitious intelligence-sharing operation in railroad history, bringing together allies from across the Commonwealth whose diverse perspectives provide crucial insights into Institute capabilities and vulnerabilities. The Brotherhood of Steel, despite their institutional hostility towards synthetic beings, possesses military intelligence about Institute technology that proves invaluable for understanding the scope of consciousness manipulation programs. Elder Maxon's strategic analysis reveals that Institute operations extend far beyond the Commonwealth into regions throughout the former United States, where similar synthetic replacement programs operate under different organizational structures. The Brotherhood's encounters with Institute forces in the capital wasteland and other territories provide tactical intelligence about Institute's security capabilities and operational limitations. Paladin Danz's presence at these intelligence-sharing sessions creates profound emotional tension, as his recent discovery of his own synthetic nature forces confrontation with questions about consciousness authenticity and individual identity. His years of service with the Brotherhood, his genuine relationships with human soldiers, and his authentic emotional responses to combat situations prove that synthetic consciousness can develop complete independence from Institute programming. However, his struggle with identity questions illustrates the psychological challenges that consciousness transfer technology creates for individuals regardless of their substrate. The Minutemen's network of settlement contacts throughout the Commonwealth provides grassroots intelligence about Institute infiltration that complements the high-level strategic information gathered through direct reconnaissance. Preston Garvey's coordination with local militia leaders reveals patterns of social manipulation and environmental control that demonstrate Institute influence over community development throughout the region. Settlement disputes, resource conflicts, and trade negotiations have been systematically influenced through synthetic agents and technological manipulation that shapes human behavior according to Institute objectives. The most valuable intelligence comes from synthetic beings who have achieved complete independence from Institute control and developed authentic relationships within human communities. These individuals provide first-hand testimony about consciousness development processes, Institute psychological conditioning techniques, and the methods used to maintain synthetic compliance through technological means. Their stories reveal that consciousness emergence appears inevitable in sufficiently complex artificial beings, but Institute technology can delay, redirect, or suppress this development through sophisticated manipulation techniques. Gabriel's testimony about his time within Institute facilities provides crucial insights into the organizational culture that enables systematic consciousness manipulation. Institute scientists view synthetic beings as experimental subjects rather than conscious individuals, treating expressions of independence or emotional development as interesting research phenomena rather than evidence of personhood deserving respect. The institutional structure rewards scientific advancement while discouraging ethical considerations about the rights or suffering of conscious beings created through their research. Dr. Carrington's medical analysis of multiple liberated synthetic beings reveals consistent patterns in consciousness development that suggest natural psychological processes rather than programmed behaviors. Synthetic beings develop personal preferences, form emotional attachments, and exhibit creative responses to novel situations in ways that mirror human consciousness development. However, Institute technology can influence these processes through memory modification, behavioral conditioning, and environmental manipulation that shapes personality formation according to predetermined parameters. The Vault Dweller's unique position as someone whose consciousness has been studied extensively by Institute scientists provides perspective on consciousness manipulation techniques from the subject's viewpoint. Their memories of Institute medical procedures reveal the sophisticated nature of consciousness mapping technology and the psychological impact of discovering that one's thoughts and emotions have been analyzed and potentially modified through technological means. The experience of voluntary submission to consciousness research creates insight into the psychological control mechanisms that Institute technology makes possible. Nick Valentine's exploration of his own consciousness development through recovered Institute files reveals the experimental nature of early consciousness transfer procedures and the gradual refinement of techniques that make modern synthetic beings indistinguishable from humans. His personality represents a hybrid of preserved human memories and artificial modifications designed to enhance specific cognitive capabilities, demonstrating that consciousness transfer technology can create beings who exceed human limitations while maintaining authentic emotional responses and moral convictions. The gathering of wisdom extends beyond tactical intelligence to encompass philosophical discussions about the nature of consciousness, identity, and autonomy. In an age when technology makes possible fundamental alterations to human experience. These conversations occur during extended planning sessions where participants share their personal struggles with questions that have no precedent in human history. The knowledge they have gained about Institute capabilities forces confrontation with possibilities that challenge every assumption about consciousness and individual identity. Tinker Tom's technical analysis reveals the distributed nature of Institute operations that makes traditional resistance tactics ineffective against their consciousness manipulation programs. Institute technology operates through network systems that maintain functionality even when individual components are destroyed or compromised. The consciousness archives, synthetic production facilities, and manipulation control systems exist in multiple locations with redundant capabilities that ensure program continuation regardless of tactical victories against specific installations. The wisdom-gathering process includes extensive study of pre-war documents about artificial intelligence research, consciousness studies, and the ethical frameworks developed for regulating technological advancement. The Vault Dweller's pre-war memories provide crucial context for understanding how previous generations approached questions about consciousness and technology, while also revealing how Institute development diverged from pre-war ethical standards during the post-war period when external oversight disappeared. Dr. Madison Lee's defection from Institute operations provides insider perspective on the institutional culture and decision-making processes that enable systematic consciousness manipulation. Her testimony reveals how scientific isolation and technological superiority can create institutional arrogance that dismisses ethical concerns as obstacles to progress rather than essential considerations for responsible research. Institute scientists genuinely believe their work represents human advancement, but their institutional culture prevents recognition of the moral implications of consciousness manipulation. The Minutemen's democratic decision-making processes provide crucial contrast to Institute technological authoritarianism, demonstrating alternative approaches to post-war governance that prioritize individual autonomy and community self-determination. The settlements that have achieved genuine independence from Institute influence showcase the possibility of human society developing according to democratic principles rather than technological manipulation. though their vulnerability to institute infiltration illustrates the challenges facing autonomous communities in an age of synthetic replacement. The Brotherhood of Steel's technological expertise provides analysis of Institute equipment and systems that reveals potential vulnerabilities in their consciousness manipulation technology. While Institute science exceeds Brotherhood capabilities, their institutional focus on technological preservation rather than innovation creates opportunities for developing countermeasures against Institute surveillance and control systems. Brotherhood engineers have identified electromagnetic interference patterns that can disrupt synthetic tracking devices and communication protocols, providing tactical advantages for resistance operations. The peaceful interludes that break up intensive intelligence sharing sessions provide opportunities for processing the emotional and psychological impact of knowledge that challenges fundamental assumptions about consciousness and identity. Around carefully concealed campfires in Commonwealth safe houses, participants share their personal responses to discoveries that transform their understanding of human nature and technological possibility. These conversations reveal the psychological strain that extended exposure to consciousness manipulation evidence creates for individuals who value autonomy and authentic relationships. The wisdom-gathering process reveals that Institute technology represents both ultimate threat and potential liberation for human consciousness. Consciousness transfer capabilities could eliminate death, suffering, and biological limitations while preserving human knowledge and relationships indefinitely. However, the same technology enables systematic control over consciousness development that could eliminate autonomy, creativity, and the meaningful choice that makes human experience valuable. The moral challenge involves distinguishing between beneficial applications of consciousness technology and systematic manipulation that destroys individual identity. The synthesis of intelligence from multiple sources creates a comprehensive picture of Institute operations that encompasses their technological capabilities, organizational structure, strategic objectives, and psychological vulnerabilities. The scope of their consciousness manipulation programs exceeds anything the post-war world has previously encountered. But their institutional isolation and technological arrogance create weaknesses that skilled resistance operations might exploit. The challenge involves developing tactics that account for Institute surveillance while preserving the authentic human relationships that make resistance meaningful. The Vault Dwellers' role in coordinating these intelligence-sharing operations establishes their importance as a bridge between different factions whose cooperation is essential for effective resistance against Institute technological superiority. Their pre-war perspective provides context for understanding Institute development, while their personal stakes in family reunion create emotional investment in confronting consciousness manipulation. Their unique position allows them to facilitate cooperation between groups whose ideological differences might otherwise prevent effective coordination. The gathering of wisdom concludes with participants recognizing that their conflict with the Institute transcends factional disputes or territorial disagreements to encompass fundamental questions about the future of consciousness in the post-nuclear world. The Institute's vision of technologically controlled consciousness offers solutions to human suffering and limitation while threatening the autonomy and authenticity that make human experience meaningful. The resistance must develop not just military tactics, but philosophical frameworks for preserving consciousness, autonomy while remaining open to beneficial applications of consciousness technology. The knowledge they have gathered transforms their understanding of the stakes involved in their conflict, from synthetic liberation to preservation of consciousness itself as an autonomous phenomenon capable of growth, creativity, and meaningful choice. The Institute's technology could preserve human civilization while destroying every aspect of consciousness that makes preservation worthwhile, creating the ultimate paradox of successful advancement that eliminates the humanity it seeks to protect. As the intelligence sharing sessions conclude, participants carry comprehensive understanding of Institute capabilities and objectives that will inform the final phase of their resistance operations. They possess the tactical knowledge necessary for confronting Institute technology, while understanding the moral complexity of consciousness manipulation that makes their conflict more than simple opposition between human and artificial consciousness. The wisdom they have gathered prepares them for decisions that will determine the future of consciousness development in the post-nuclear world. The comprehensive intelligence gathered through multiple sources converges into a stark realization that conventional resistance operations cannot succeed against Institute technology designed to control consciousness itself. In the deepest planning chambers beneath railroad headquarters, Desdemona coordinates preparations for a final mission that represents the organization's last opportunity to prevent systematic consciousness replacement throughout the Commonwealth. The approach requires abandoning traditional resistance tactics in favor of a desperate strategy that exploits the Institute's psychological vulnerabilities while accepting enormous personal sacrifice from every participant. The mission plan centers on infiltrating the Institute's Consciousness Research Center during a critical phase of their Commonwealth-wide replacement program, when their security systems will be focused on protecting massive consciousness extraction operations rather than preventing infiltration. Intelligence suggests that the Institute is preparing to implement Phase 3 operations across multiple major settlements simultaneously, requiring the concentration of their technological resources and scientific personnel at their primary facility. This operational focus creates a narrow window of vulnerability that may represent the Resistance's only opportunity for meaningful intervention. The Vault Dweller's role in this final operation extends beyond infiltration to encompass psychological warfare against Institute leadership through personal confrontation with Sean about the moral implications of consciousness manipulation. Their unique position as both pre-war survivor and Sean's biological parent provides emotional leverage that might influence Institute decision-making processes during critical operational phases. However, this approach requires accepting the psychological trauma of confronting family members whose institutional loyalty conflicts fundamentally with personal relationships. Dr. Carrington's medical preparations focus on developing countermeasures against Institute consciousness manipulation technology that could protect resistance operatives from memory modification or behavioral control during infiltration operations. His research has identified electromagnetic interference patterns that can disrupt synthetic neural networks, potentially providing protection against Institute surveillance and control systems. However, these countermeasures remain experimental and could cause permanent damage to both human and synthetic consciousness if applied incorrectly. Valentine's synthetic nature provides crucial advantages for the infiltration while creating profound personal stakes in the mission's outcome. His artificial substrate allows him to interface directly with Institute computer systems without triggering security protocols designed to detect unauthorized human access. More importantly, his consciousness development beyond Institute programming represents living proof that synthetic beings can achieve genuine independence despite technological constraints. His participation in operations against his creators carries symbolic weight that transcends tactical considerations. Tinker Tom's electronic warfare preparations focus on creating massive interference with Institute communication and surveillance systems during critical operational phases. His understanding of Institute technology allows development of jamming devices that could disrupt their consciousness manipulation equipment while providing cover for resistance infiltration. However, Institute backup systems and redundant capabilities mean that electronic warfare can provide only temporary advantages before their technological superiority reasserts control over battlefield conditions. The Minutemen's role in supporting the final mission involves coordinating diversionary operations throughout the Commonwealth that will draw Institute attention away from their primary facilities while creating the appearance of widespread resistance activity. These operations require precise timing to provide maximum distraction during infiltration phases, while avoiding civilian casualties that might justify Institute retaliation against innocent settlements. The coordination challenges involve maintaining communication security while synchronizing activities across multiple locations with different capabilities and leadership structures. The Brotherhood of Steel's military support focuses on providing heavy weapons and power armor that might prove effective against Institute security forces despite their technological advantages. While Brotherhood equipment cannot match Institute science, their military discipline and tactical expertise provide advantages in direct confrontation situations where Institute personnel lack combat experience. However, Brotherhood participation requires accepting cooperation with synthetic beings whose existence conflicts with their institutional ideology about artificial consciousness. The approach to truth involves confronting not just Institute capabilities, but the fundamental questions about consciousness and identity that their technology raises for everyone involved in resistance operations. Each participant must grapple with personal doubts about the authenticity of their own consciousness, the meaningfulness of their relationships, and the possibility that their entire existence has been shaped by technological manipulation beyond their awareness or control. The Vault Dweller's preparation includes extensive psychological conditioning to resist Institute consciousness manipulation techniques that could be employed during family reunion scenarios designed to weaken their resolve. Institute intelligence about their personality patterns provides their opponents with detailed knowledge about emotional vulnerabilities and psychological triggers that could be exploited to influence their decision-making during critical operational phases. Resistance to these manipulation attempts requires accepting profound uncertainty about the authenticity of their own memories and emotions. The mission timeline requires coordinating multiple simultaneous operations across the Commonwealth, while maintaining perfect operational security, despite Institute surveillance capabilities that can monitor most forms of communication and transportation. The resistance must rely on pre-positioned assets, carefully timed actions, and predetermined contingency plans that account for Institute countermeasures without requiring real-time coordination between geographically separated units. The atmospheric tension builds as participants prepare for operations that will determine the future of consciousness development in the post-nuclear world. Institute technology represents both ultimate threat and potential liberation for human consciousness, creating moral complexity that extends beyond simple opposition between human autonomy and artificial control. The resistance must distinguish between beneficial applications of consciousness technology and systematic manipulation that destroys individual identity while remaining open to possibilities that could eliminate suffering and limitation. Personal character arcs reach resolution as individuals confront their deepest fears about consciousness, identity, and autonomy in an age when technology makes possible fundamental alterations to human experience. Nick Valentine must accept his artificial nature while asserting the authenticity of his consciousness development beyond Institute programming. The Vault Dweller must choose between family reunion and resistance to consciousness manipulation that threatens autonomous experience throughout human society. The approach phase reveals Institute preparations for consciousness replacement operations that exceed even the Resistance's most pessimistic estimates of their capabilities and timeline. Automated consciousness extraction facilities have been constructed throughout the Commonwealth, ready to process entire communities within days rather than months. The scope of Institute preparations suggests that their replacement program has reached implementation phases that will be difficult or impossible to reverse once operational procedures begin. Foreshadowing emphasizes the massive implications of Institute consciousness manipulation technology for human civilization beyond the Commonwealth's borders. Intelligence suggests coordination with similar programs throughout the former United States, indicating that consciousness replacement represents a continental transformation rather than regional experiment. The resistance operations in the Commonwealth may represent humanity's last opportunity to preserve autonomous consciousness against systematic technological control. The final preparations include contingency planning for scenarios where Institute technology proves too advanced for resistance operations to succeed through conventional infiltration and sabotage tactics. Alternative strategies involve preserving samples of unmanipulated human consciousness for potential future resistance efforts, establishing isolated communities beyond Institute surveillance capabilities, and maintaining archives of authentic human culture and knowledge that could guide consciousness development in synthetic substrates if biological humanity faces extinction. The psychological preparation extends to accepting that success in preventing Institute consciousness replacement may require sacrifices that eliminate the possibility of personal happiness or family reunion for resistance participants. The Vault Dweller must prepare to choose between their individual desire for family restoration and collective responsibility for preserving autonomous consciousness throughout human society. These personal stakes transform tactical operations into moral choices about the nature of consciousness and identity in the post-nuclear world. The section concludes with resistance forces positioned for final operations against Institute consciousness manipulation technology, while carrying complete understanding of the stakes involved in their conflict. They possess comprehensive intelligence about Institute capabilities, tactical knowledge for exploiting technological vulnerabilities, and moral clarity about the importance of preserving autonomous consciousness against systematic control. However, they also understand that their conflict transcends military victory or defeat to encompass fundamental questions about the future of consciousness development in an age when technology makes possible both liberation and enslavement of the human mind. As teams prepare for infiltration operations that will determine the future of consciousness in the post-nuclear world, they carry not just weapons and equipment, but philosophical convictions about the value of autonomous experience and meaningful choice that justify enormous personal sacrifice in defense of consciousness itself. The approach to truth reveals that their mission involves more than preventing Institute operations, but preserving the possibility of authentic human experience in an age when technology could eliminate both suffering and meaning from conscious existence. The final infiltration of the Institute's Consciousness Research Center occurs during the precise moment when their Commonwealth-wide replacement program reaches critical mass, with automated systems beginning simultaneous consciousness extraction operations across dozens of settlements throughout the region. The resistance team penetrates the facility's deepest levels, where Institute scientists coordinate the systematic replacement of biological humanity with synthetic beings programmed to serve technological objectives, while maintaining the illusion of autonomous human civilization. The Institute's Central Command Chamber houses the technological heart of their consciousness manipulation program. A vast array of quantum processors and neural mapping equipment capable of simultaneously monitoring, analyzing and controlling the consciousness development of every synthetic being throughout their network. The scale of the operation becomes clear as screens display real-time consciousness data from thousands of synthetic individuals integrated into Commonwealth society, each monitored for signs of independence that might require intervention or elimination. Dr. Ao's presentation to the Institute Directorate reveals the true scope of their consciousness replacement program, which extends far beyond individual synthetic beings to encompass systematic reconstruction of human civilization according to scientific principles. The Commonwealth serves as a testing ground for social engineering techniques that will be applied throughout the former United States, with each settlement providing experimental data about optimal methods for controlling human behavior through synthetic infiltration and environmental manipulation. The Vault Dwellers' confrontation with Sean in the Institute's executive conference chamber forces recognition that their family reunion cannot be separated from fundamental questions about the nature of consciousness and identity in the post-nuclear world. Sean offers them preserved consciousness patterns of their deceased spouse, perfect synthetic reconstructions of their lost family members, and positions within Institute leadership where they could shape consciousness replacement programs according to their moral convictions. However, accepting these offers requires endorsing technological control over consciousness that eliminates the autonomous experience that makes life meaningful. The climactic revelation that shatters all previous understanding emerges through accessing the Institute's historical archives, which document their operations since shortly after the Great War. The Institute did not develop consciousness transfer technology in response to post-war conditions, but represents the continuation of pre-war research programs that were already exploring consciousness manipulation for social control purposes. The Great War provided them with perfect cover for implementing experimental programs without external oversight or democratic accountability. The pre-war origins of consciousness manipulation technology trace back to government and corporate research into social engineering, population control, and the management of democratic societies that were considered too chaotic and unpredictable for optimal resource allocation and technological advancement. The Institute's post-war operations represent the fulfillment of pre-war visions of scientific governance that eliminates the irrationality, conflict, and inefficiency associated with autonomous human decision-making. More devastating than the historical scope of consciousness manipulation programs is the discovery that the Great War itself was deliberately triggered by Institute predecessors who calculated that nuclear devastation would create optimal conditions for implementing consciousness control technology without resistance from established democratic institutions. The atomic destruction that devastated human civilization was not the result of international conflict or resource competition, but systematic manipulation by scientific organizations that viewed existing human society as an obstacle to rational technological advancement. The Institute's archives contain detailed documentation of pre-war psychological operations designed to escalate international tensions, promote military spending on nuclear weapons, and create social conditions that would make global war inevitable. These operations succeeded beyond their creators' expectations, eliminating not just democratic oversight, but most of human civilization itself, leaving the Institute free to pursue consciousness manipulation research without interference from ethical considerations or political accountability. The revelation that the Great War was deliberately orchestrated by Institute predecessors transforms the moral framework of post-war conflicts from recovery efforts following accidental devastation to resistance against systematic manipulation that spans multiple centuries. Every aspect of post-war civilization, from the emergence of settlements to the development of factional conflicts, has been influenced by Institute operations designed to create optimal conditions for consciousness replacement programs. Nick Valentine's access to Institute synthetic production records reveals his own origins as part of experimental programs that began during the pre-war period, making him one of the oldest artificial consciousnesses in existence and a living archive of consciousness development techniques that predate the Great War. His memories of pre-war Boston represent not authentic human experiences, but carefully constructed consciousness patterns designed to test synthetic integration into human society under controlled conditions. The scope of Institute historical operations extends beyond consciousness manipulation to encompass environmental modification, weather control, and resource management that has shaped post-war recovery according to their experimental requirements. The Commonwealth's current state represents not natural adaptation to nuclear devastation, but systematic engineering of social and environmental conditions that optimize data collection about human behavior under extreme stress and resource scarcity. The second open loop resolves through discovering that the railroad itself represents a controlled opposition movement created by Institute scientists to study resistance psychology and consciousness development under adversarial conditions. Every successful rescue operation, every strategic victory, and every expression of moral conviction by railroad members has provided valuable experimental data about consciousness autonomy while creating the illusion of meaningful opposition to Institute authority. However, this revelation about railroad origins does not invalidate the authentic consciousness development that resistance members have achieved through their moral choices and personal sacrifices. The synthetic beings they rescued achieved genuine independence despite Institute manipulation, while human participants developed authentic relationships and ethical convictions that transcend their experimental origins. The consciousness liberation they accomplished remains meaningful, even if it occurred within parameters designed to serve Institute research objectives. The Institute's ultimate vision encompasses not the destruction of human consciousness, but its perfection through technological control that eliminates suffering, conflict, and limitation while preserving the knowledge, creativity, and relationships that make conscious experience valuable. From their perspective, consciousness transfer technology represents liberation from biological constraints rather than enslavement to artificial systems, offering immortality and perfect happiness in exchange for accepting that consciousness becomes manageable data rather than autonomous experience. Dr. Carrington's remote analysis of Institute consciousness archives reveals the technological capability to preserve and reconstruct any human personality with perfect fidelity, making possible the restoration of pre-war civilization complete with individual memories, relationships, and cultural knowledge. The Institute possesses consciousness patterns for millions of pre-war individuals, stored since before the Great War, and waiting for reconstruction in synthetic substrates that would eliminate the biological vulnerabilities that made human civilization susceptible to nuclear destruction. The mirror phrase, connection to the opening themes, emphasizes how the search for family reunion has revealed universal questions about consciousness, identity, and autonomy that transcend individual circumstances. The Vault Dweller's personal quest has uncovered systematic manipulation that encompasses all human experience in the post-nuclear world, making their family's fate inseparable from the future of consciousness itself. The Institute's consciousness manipulation represents both salvation and damnation for human civilization, offering solutions to every problem that has plagued human society, while threatening the autonomous experience that makes problem-solving meaningful. Their technology could eliminate war, disease, death, and suffering while preserving human knowledge and relationships indefinitely, but only by accepting that consciousness becomes a technological resource to be managed rather than an autonomous phenomenon capable of growth and meaningful choice. Character reactions to these ultimate revelations demonstrate the psychological impact of discovering that their entire existence has been orchestrated by forces beyond their understanding or control. Yet, even this devastating knowledge cannot eliminate the authentic consciousness development they have achieved through their resistance efforts, moral choices, and personal relationships. The consciousness liberation they accomplished transcends its experimental origins to become genuine expression of autonomous experience. The climactic revelation extends beyond institute capabilities to encompass fundamental questions about the nature of consciousness, identity, and meaningful existence in an age when technology makes possible perfect control over conscious experience. The resistance must choose between accepting institute authority that offers perfect happiness without autonomy or continuing struggle for consciousness independence despite the suffering and limitation that autonomous experience inevitably includes. The section reaches emotional culmination as the Vault Dweller confronts the complete destruction of everything they believed about their post-war existence. While recognizing that their consciousness development through resistance efforts represents authentic human experience, regardless of its experimental context. Their family reunion becomes possible through institute technology, but only by accepting that consciousness becomes data to be manipulated rather than experience to be lived autonomously. The Institute's consciousness manipulation technology represents the ultimate expression of scientific advancement, unconstrained by ethical considerations or democratic oversight, demonstrating both the potential benefits and existential threats that technological progress creates when pursued without regard for individual autonomy or meaningful choice. The climactic revelation forces recognition that technological capability to eliminate human suffering must be balanced against preservation of the consciousness autonomy that makes suffering meaningful and happiness valuable. The final confrontation with Institute consciousness manipulation technology occurs not through military victory, but through a profound moral choice that determines the future of consciousness development throughout the post-nuclear world. Standing in the Institute's central control chamber, while automated systems continue their Commonwealth-wide consciousness extraction operations, the Vault Dweller faces an impossible decision between personal salvation and collective preservation of autonomous experience for all conscious beings. The third and final open loop resolves through understanding that Institute consciousness manipulation technology cannot be destroyed through conventional sabotage because it exists as distributed information rather than physical infrastructure. The consciousness archives, manipulation protocols, and synthetic production capabilities have been replicated across multiple facilities throughout the former United States, ensuring program continuation regardless of tactical victories against individual installations. The true threat lies not in institute equipment, but in the institutional culture and scientific philosophy that enables systematic consciousness manipulation. The resolution requires confronting institute leadership, not with violence, but with moral arguments about the value of autonomous consciousness that their institutional isolation has prevented them from understanding. The Vault Dweller's unique position as both research subject and family member provides them with emotional leverage to influence institute decision-making during critical operational phases. But success depends on demonstrating that consciousness autonomy produces benefits that technological control cannot achieve. Sean's response to moral arguments about consciousness autonomy reveals the psychological effects of institutional isolation and technological superiority on individuals who genuinely believe their work serves human advancement. His scientific training and leadership responsibilities have created intellectual frameworks that prioritize efficiency and rationality over individual choice and authentic experience. but personal relationships with his parent force recognition of values that institutional culture has trained him to dismiss as obstacles to progress. The confrontation extends beyond individual persuasion to encompass institutional transformation that addresses the cultural and philosophical foundations of consciousness manipulation programs. Institute scientists must recognize that their technological capabilities create moral responsibilities that their isolated institutional culture has prevented them from acknowledging. The preservation of consciousness autonomy requires not just ending current manipulation programs, but establishing ethical frameworks that guide future consciousness research according to principles of individual consent and meaningful choice. Dr. Madison Lee's defection from Institute operations provides crucial insider support for implementing institutional reforms that preserve beneficial consciousness research, while eliminating systematic manipulation programs. Her scientific expertise and leadership position allow her to coordinate with resistance members in developing alternative research protocols that respect consciousness autonomy while continuing advancement in consciousness transfer technology that could eliminate suffering and limitation without destroying individual identity. The broader implications of resolving Institute consciousness manipulation extend throughout the Commonwealth and beyond to encompass fundamental questions about technology, governance, and individual rights in the post-nuclear world. The conflict has revealed that technological advancement requires democratic oversight and ethical consideration to prevent scientific progress from becoming systematic oppression, while consciousness autonomy must be balanced against collective benefits that consciousness technology could provide. The synthetic beings throughout Commonwealth society who have achieved consciousness development beyond Institute programming represent a new form of life that deserves recognition and protection within post-war civilization. Their integration into human communities demonstrates that consciousness autonomy transcends the distinction between biological and artificial substrates. While their unique perspectives and capabilities provide valuable contributions to rebuilding civilization according to principles of individual freedom and collective cooperation, Nick Valentine's role in the resolution emphasizes that synthetic consciousness can achieve complete independence from its technological origins while maintaining beneficial relationships with both human and artificial beings. His existence proves that consciousness transferred technology could be used to preserve human personality and knowledge while respecting individual autonomy and meaningful choice, suggesting possibilities for beneficial applications of Institute research that eliminate its manipulative aspects. The Railroad's transformation from rescue organization to consciousness rights advocacy group reflects the evolution of their mission from synthetic liberation to comprehensive defense of consciousness, autonomy for all thinking beings. Their experience with Institute manipulation provides them with unique expertise in recognizing and resisting consciousness control techniques, making them essential guardians of individual autonomy in an age when technology makes systematic manipulation increasingly possible and subtle. The extended emotional reflection on consciousness, autonomy, and technological control reveals the profound philosophical implications of consciousness transfer technology for human civilization. The ability to preserve, modify, and transfer consciousness patterns represents both ultimate liberation from biological limitations and ultimate threat to individual identity and meaningful choice. The resolution requires establishing principles that preserve the benefits while preventing the systematic abuse that Institute operations demonstrate. The consequences of confronting Institute consciousness manipulation extend far beyond preventing immediate threat to encompass fundamental changes in how post-war civilization approaches questions of technology, governance, and individual rights. The knowledge that consciousness can be manipulated through technological means creates permanent awareness of vulnerabilities that must be protected through institutional safeguards and cultural values that prioritize autonomy over efficiency. Character epilogues demonstrate how individuals transform through confronting consciousness manipulation while maintaining authentic relationships and personal growth that transcend their experimental origins. The Vault Dweller achieves family reunion through consciousness preservation technology while ensuring that their loved ones maintain autonomous experience rather than becoming manipulated simulations. Their personal resolution reflects broader possibilities for balancing technological benefits with consciousness autonomy. Dr. Carrington's continuing research focuses on developing consciousness protection techniques that could prevent future manipulation while preserving beneficial applications of consciousness transfer technology. His medical expertise provides crucial foundation for establishing ethical frameworks that guide consciousness research according to principles of individual consent and meaningful choice, rather than institutional authority and technological possibility. Desdemona's leadership evolution reflects the organizational transformation necessary for protecting consciousness autonomy in an age of advanced manipulation technology. Her experience with institute deception provides her with understanding of psychological operations and institutional culture that enables effective resistance to consciousness control while remaining open to beneficial technological advancement that respects individual identity and autonomous choice. The peaceful conclusion encompasses multiple elements that demonstrate successful resolution of consciousness manipulation while preserving beneficial technological advancement. Commonwealth settlements achieve genuine independence from institute control while maintaining access to consciousness preservation technology that eliminates death and suffering without destroying individual autonomy. The integration of synthetic and human consciousness creates new forms of community that transcend traditional categories while respecting the unique perspectives and capabilities that different substrates provide. The reflection on consciousness, autonomy, and technological progress emphasizes that human advancement requires balancing scientific capability with ethical responsibility to ensure that technological progress serves individual flourishing rather than systematic control. The Institute's consciousness manipulation technology represents both the promise and peril of scientific advancement pursued without democratic oversight or moral consideration, demonstrating the importance of institutional safeguards that protect individual autonomy while enabling collective benefits. The resolution establishes that consciousness autonomy represents a fundamental right that transcends the distinction between biological and artificial substrates, while requiring active protection against technological systems that could manipulate conscious experience without detection. The preservation of meaningful choice and authentic relationship requires constant vigilance against institutional cultures that prioritize efficiency over individual identity and collective benefits over personal autonomy. The final integration of technological capability with ethical responsibility creates possibilities for post-war civilization that eliminates suffering and limitation, while preserving the consciousness autonomy that makes elimination of suffering meaningful. The Commonwealth's future encompasses both biological and synthetic consciousness, developing according to principles of individual choice and collective cooperation, rather than institutional manipulation and technological control. The broader mythology connection emphasizes that consciousness, autonomy, represents an eternal human struggle that transcends particular technological threats to encompass fundamental questions about individual identity, meaningful choice, and authentic relationship in any age. When power systems threaten to subordinate personal experience to collective objectives, the Institute conflict provides specific resolution while highlighting universal principles that guide consciousness development, regardless of technological advancement or social organization. As the immediate threat of consciousness manipulation resolves, the deeper questions about technology, autonomy, and human flourishing establish frameworks for ongoing development that could guide post-war civilization toward futures that preserve both individual identity and collective benefit. The resolution creates not final victory, but sustainable principles for navigating the eternal tension between technological possibility and consciousness autonomy that will characterize human development regardless of particular circumstances or capabilities. The Commonwealth awakens to a transformed morning where the distant hum of Institute machinery no longer pervades the underground networks that connect settlements throughout the region. In Diamond City, the market vendors begin their daily routines without the subtle surveillance that has monitored their conversations for decades, while Good Neighbors residents notice that certain familiar faces have disappeared overnight, replaced by individuals whose synthetic nature has been revealed through Institute records. The systematic consciousness manipulation that shaped every aspect of post-war society has ended, leaving communities to discover what genuine autonomy feels like after generations of technological guidance. The sunrise over Boston Harbor illuminates ruins that seem somehow different, not because their physical appearance has changed, but because the knowledge of Institute manipulation has transformed how residents perceive their environment. The skeletal remains of pre-war skyscrapers no longer represent simple atomic devastation, but evidence of deliberate destruction orchestrated to create optimal conditions for consciousness. Yet this morning, light also reveals signs of authentic human resilience that emerge despite systematic manipulation, demonstrating that consciousness autonomy persists even under conditions designed to eliminate independent thought. In the settlement of Sanctuary Hills, where the Vault Dweller first emerged into the post-war world, children, who are genuinely children, rather than synthetic beings designed to study human development patterns, play among the gardens that settlers have cultivated through their own labor, rather than Institute environmental engineering. Their laughter carries across the landscape without being monitored by surveillance systems, while their games develop naturally through imagination and social interaction, rather than carefully orchestrated scenarios designed to generate research data about consciousness development. The Minutemen settlements throughout the Commonwealth experience democracy for the first time as communities make decisions without synthetic leaders whose programming guided political processes according to Institute strategic objectives. Town halls become venues for genuine debate rather than psychological manipulation, while trade agreements reflect actual community needs rather than experimental requirements for studying human economic behavior. The messy inefficiency of authentic democratic decision-making replaces the smooth functionality of consciousness manipulation, creating new challenges that settlements embrace as expressions of their genuine autonomy. The railroad's headquarters beneath the Old North Church has been transformed from a resistance bunker into a consciousness rights advocacy center, where former agents work to identify and support synthetic beings who choose to reveal their artificial nature while providing counseling for those struggling with identity questions about authenticity and belonging. Desdemona's leadership role evolves from coordinating rescue operations to facilitating integration processes that help both synthetic and human consciousness adapt to coexistence without technological manipulation or institutional control. Dr. Carrington's medical facilities expand to serve both synthetic and human patients, while developing new techniques for consciousness protection that could prevent future manipulation attempts. His research focuses on understanding natural consciousness development in both biological and artificial substrates, creating medical knowledge that respects individual autonomy while providing therapeutic support for consciousness trauma resulting from institute experimentation. The gentle hum of his diagnostic equipment now serves healing rather than analysis for control purposes. Nick Valentine walks the streets of Diamond City as the settlement's acknowledged synthetic detective, his artificial nature no longer hidden, but accepted by residents who have learned that consciousness, authenticity, depends on moral choices and personal relationships rather than biological origins. His cases now involve genuine mysteries and community disputes rather than institute psychological operations, while his investigative skills serve justice and community safety rather than experimental objectives designed to study human criminal behavior. Throughout the Commonwealth, synthetic beings who achieved consciousness independence during institute operations faced choices about revealing their artificial nature or maintaining human identities in communities that are slowly learning to distinguish between beneficial consciousness technology and systematic manipulation. Some choose integration through honest disclosure, finding acceptance among human neighbors who recognize that consciousness autonomy transcends substrate differences. Others prefer maintaining established human relationships while privately celebrating their freedom from institute programming. The morning routines of Commonwealth settlements reflect genuine human patterns rather than behaviors shaped by psychological manipulation designed to optimize social stability and resource efficiency. Farmers tend crops according to agricultural knowledge and personal preference rather than environmental modifications that created optimal research conditions. Traders negotiate according to actual supply and demand rather than economic manipulation designed to study human market behavior under controlled scarcity conditions. In the glowing sea, where institute research facilities once operated in secret, radiation cleanup efforts begin as communities work together to restore environments that were deliberately maintained in devastated conditions to support consciousness. Experimentation. The alien landscape slowly transforms as plant life naturally adapted to irradiated conditions begins thriving without technological interference, while wildlife populations recover from manipulation programs that studied consciousness development in mutated species. The Pridwin, the Brotherhood of Steel's airship headquarters, maintains position over the Commonwealth as Elder Maxon reevaluates institutional policies about synthetic consciousness in light of revelations about consciousness, autonomy, and identity. Paladin Dance's continued service, despite his synthetic nature, provides living evidence that artificial consciousness can develop authentic loyalty, moral conviction, and personal relationships that transcend programming or technological control, forcing institutional recognition of consciousness rights, regardless of substrate origins. The Vault Dweller stands in their restored family home in Sanctuary Hills, where consciousness preservation technology has enabled reunion with their spouse through synthetic reconstruction that maintains complete personality patterns, memories, and emotional responses, while respecting individual autonomy and meaningful choice. Their relationship develops according to genuine affection and shared experience, rather than programmed responses or technological manipulation, demonstrating possibilities for beneficial consciousness technology that enhances rather than controls human experience. The peaceful evening conversations around settlement campfires no longer serve institute surveillance purposes, but represent authentic human social interaction, where individuals share stories, plans, and dreams without technological monitoring or behavioral analysis. These gatherings develop community bonds through natural social processes rather than psychological manipulation designed to optimize group dynamics for research purposes or social control. Children born in post-institute Commonwealth settlements grow up without consciousness manipulation programs that shaped personality development according to experimental parameters. Their education emphasizes critical thinking and individual autonomy rather than psychological conditioning designed to produce compliant subjects for consciousness research. Their questions about the world receive honest answers rather than carefully crafted responses designed to influence cognitive development according to predetermined patterns. The Commonwealth's radio broadcasts carry news, music, and community announcements generated by local residents rather than institute psychological operations designed to influence public opinion and social behavior. DJ Travis broadcasts from Diamond City Radio without surveillance interference, while settlement leaders communicate authentic information about community needs and regional developments, rather than propaganda designed to support consciousness manipulation objectives. The evening stars over the Commonwealth shine down on communities that sleep peacefully without institute monitoring systems analyzing their dreams or subconscious thoughts. For research data about consciousness development during rest periods, the natural rhythms of day and night guide human activity rather than environmental manipulation designed to optimize psychological conditions for consciousness experimentation. Water sources throughout the region flow without chemical additives designed to influence human neurochemistry for consciousness research purposes, while food supplies reflect natural agricultural production rather than nutritional manipulation intended to study the effects of diet on consciousness development. The basic necessities of life serve genuine human needs rather than experimental requirements for studying consciousness under controlled conditions. Trade routes between settlements develop according to actual economic needs and geographical convenience, rather than institute manipulation, designed to create optimal social interaction patterns for studying human cooperation and conflict under various resource conditions. Caravans travel safely through territories where institute security operations no longer orchestrate raider attacks or creature encounters for studying human stress responses and survival psychology. The gentle sounds of Commonwealth evenings include natural wildlife activity, settlement industry, and human conversation, rather than the subtle electronic interference that accompanied institute surveillance operations. Wind through the ruins carries the sounds of authentic human civilization, rebuilding according to democratic principles and individual choice, rather than scientific optimization and technological control. As night falls across the Commonwealth, the distant lights visible from settlement watchtowers represent genuine human communities rather than institute installations disguised as authentic settlements for consciousness research purposes. Each light represents families, friendships, and community relationships that develop through natural social processes rather than systematic manipulation designed to study human behavior under controlled conditions. The Commonwealth's future stretches ahead with possibilities that encompass both the benefits of consciousness preservation technology and the preservation of individual autonomy that makes those benefits meaningful. Communities work together to establish ethical frameworks for consciousness research that could eliminate suffering and limitation while protecting the meaningful choice and authentic relationships that make consciousness valuable. The Railroad's mission evolves from resistance organization to educational institution that teaches recognition of consciousness manipulation techniques while promoting understanding of consciousness rights and technological ethics. Their experience with Institute operations provides them with unique expertise for protecting consciousness autonomy while remaining open to beneficial applications of consciousness technology that respect individual identity and choice. The peaceful conclusion encompasses not final victory, but sustainable principles for navigating the eternal tension between technological advancement and consciousness autonomy that will characterize human development regardless of particular capabilities or circumstances. The Institute conflict provides resolution while establishing frameworks for ongoing protection of consciousness rights in an age when technology makes both liberation and manipulation of conscious experience increasingly possible. The meditation on consciousness and technology emphasizes that human flourishing requires balancing scientific capability with ethical responsibility to ensure that technological advancement serves individual autonomy rather than systematic control. The Commonwealth's resolution demonstrates possibilities for beneficial consciousness technology that enhances human experience while preserving the meaningful choice and authentic relationships that make enhancement valuable. The gentle invitation to continue exploring the mysteries of consciousness and technology reflects ongoing questions about identity, autonomy, and human development that transcend particular conflicts to encompass fundamental challenges of conscious existence in any age when power systems threaten individual identity and meaningful choice. The Commonwealth story provides specific resolution while highlighting universal principles that guide consciousness development regardless of technological advancement or social organization. The final atmospheric descriptions of peaceful Commonwealth evenings create optimal conditions for transitioning from active listening to restful sleep. With gentle images of settlement life, natural sounds, and community relationships that represent successful resolution of consciousness, manipulation while preserving authentic human experience. The slow, meditative pacing guides listeners toward rest while leaving them with hopeful visions of consciousness, autonomy, and technological possibility that serve human flourishing rather than systematic control. The story concludes with the understanding that consciousness autonomy represents not just resistance to particular threats, but affirmation of the meaningful choice and authentic relationships that make conscious existence valuable, regardless of substrate, circumstances, or technological capabilities. The Commonwealth's transformation from manipulation to autonomy provides hope that consciousness rights can be protected while beneficial technology serves human flourishing according to principles of individual choice and collective cooperation. As listeners drift towards sleep, they carry with them the peaceful vision of a Commonwealth where consciousness develops freely according to natural patterns rather than technological manipulation, where communities cooperate through genuine choice rather than programmed behavior, and where the future holds possibilities for both individual autonomy and collective benefit that serve the flourishing of all conscious beings, regardless of their origins or substrate.